So, people, is it better now? Yes, the class was on. We had to again like restart the session to get over the miseries you were suffering from. Is it fine? Yes? Okay, great. So let us start with the given dimension. We were discussing about Plato's idea of justice, sorry, Aristotle's idea of justice, and we were discussing about Nicomachean ethics, right? So I said that in Nicomachean ethics, he discussed the term of justice from a broader perspective as well. Narrow perspective was treating equally, but broader perspective, when we were discussing about it, so we can connect it with the possibility of this laws, rules and customs. So from laws, rules and customs, the word custom is interesting because when we are talking about Aristotle's nomos, nomos is associated with, we can consider, not just rules and regulations or laws, it is also associated with a body of norms that the society is associated with. So we can consider entire system of custom. Okay, the entire system of custom can be associated with nomos, right? So on the other hand, we can see that Aristotle would not call a law as like we can consider as law. He would call it as a decree. And why he would call it as a decree? Because he felt that tyrants rule by decree, and when we are talking about kings, when we are talking about emperors, they will be ruling by decree. So his idea of law is more associated with the coercive nature of imposing the do's and don'ts upon the citizens, and that's what decree is all about. Okay, so it might, however, be in accord with a law that, like traitors are not even allowed a public burial. And further, Aristotle held that being lawful, because lawfulness is associated with the broader idea of justice. So lawfulness is associated with the entire system of custom, not merely rules, regulations, and custom, which is generally it is considered. It is also the entire system of custom which is incorporated. It is associated with decree that we all can connect with. Okay, yes, nomos is unwritten laws and customs belonging to the community femina. As you can see, it is entire system of customs. That's what I'm constantly hyphenating, that we need to understand. So in other words, the letter of law should not be co-positioned. Jettisoned means co-positioned. Okay, so co-positioned, when it becomes clear that legislators are not going to apply the law in a specific way. So we should, when we are talking about the component of law, we should understand that the law needs to be understood from the perspective of interpersonal relations as well. So Plato and Aristotle, when we are discussing the two, we can see that Plato held that justice is an intrapersonal phenomena. Remember Plato's idea of justice, it was based on the three principles. Can you recall what they were? First was associated with, remember, philosopher king, then there was the army, then there was citizens. So what were the, we can consider, values they were associated with? Can you recall all of it that has been taught yesterday? All of you? Yes, very good. So Sudipto, it can be connected with wisdom. It can be connected with we can say the component of valor or courage or fortitude. Okay, so valor. We can also connect it with temperament, temperance, not temperament. Sudipto, correct yourself. It is temperance. There's a difference between temperament and temperance. Temperament is your tendencies, emotional tendencies. Temperance is capability to regulate your emotion, control your desires. Okay, so temperance, and all these three clubbed together creates justice. So Plato's idea of justice is happening within the individual. When the individual is exercising wisdom, valor, temperance, then justice is something which the individual arrives at. Okay, so when we are talking about his idea of justice, it is intrapersonal, within a person. Okay, whereas Aristotle, when we are talking about him, he is saying that one must involve oneself with one's city's affairs. Means one should not dissociate from what is happening around us. So our idea of justice will be associated with the interpersonal affairs, how people are interacting with each other. So Aristotle is differing in his idea of justice from what Plato is suggesting. Plato is considering that the philosophers should withdraw from public affairs. He is speaking just the opposite, that philosophers should not get involved in the public affairs, so that the orders are quite just. Why? Because philosophers will have multidimensional interpretations, and those multidimensional interpretations will hyphenate the imperfections of the system, the challenges or problems of the system, and that is going to again create a problem of injustice. So Plato, when he is discussing about it, he has held that such imperfect systems, okay, such imperfect systems will only corrupt and victimize, okay, will only corrupt and victimize those who engage in them, okay. So it is going to create that given challenge or that given possibility related to, we can consider this given dimension, that it is going to create imperfect systems that's going to corrupt and victimize those who engage with that given possibility. So from our end, Payal, everything is good because everyone has is experiencing a resolving in technical glitch. So I think you need to refresh, or maybe you leave the session, rejoin. Maybe that problem can be addressed. All right. Now, so Aristotle's method of defining justice is by the means of opposites. And by means of opposites, what do we imply to say? Once we understand what is injustice, we understand the opposite of it is justice. That's what he explains. So, when we are talking about equality, we need to understand what is inequality, we understand what equality is. So, his idea of arriving at justice is quite different from how Plato is discussing the idea of justice. So, according to him, we all can see that the component of punishment, so punishment should be proportional or equal to the crime. As the crime is there, so be the punishment. That was the first definition of justice, the narrow definition, if you can recall. So, that is something which Aristotle is saying. The price should be proportional or equal or to the value of the object, means the loss that has been caused related to an unjust behavior. That's what Aristotle is saying. So, Aristotle thought that unjust laws exist. In fact, a whole community can be mistaken in their concept of their ultimate goal or well being. And then Sparta is a common example used by Aristotle, and the details of which are unnecessary because then he goes on and on that how in Sparta a whole community is mistaken for, like, the ultimate good, how it is. Like, for example, let me share, in Germany, in the till Second World War, Jews were considered as a mistaken community. The entire community was mistaken as a incorrect community, which was not fitting in the ultimate goal of development of German society, German community, and on the basis of which Hitler could endorse violence, on the basis of which Hitler could justify violence. Everyone was shocked and everyone was moving like a herd, following the instructions of Hitler. So when we are talking about the idea of justice, okay, so justice is intellectual, justice is an emotional skill when we speak of it, and which brings about a community which possesses a stable system of laws, rules, and customs when we are speaking about it. Okay, it is also associated with ultimate goal, well-being, when we are talking about the idea of justice. So this is Aristotelian understanding of justice, which is associated with intellectual and emotional skill. And when intellectual and emotional skill is there, it is associated with a community. It is not intrapersonal like that of Plato. And with justice, laws, rules, customs will be furthering, they will be helping in attaining our ultimate goal, and which is well-being of the society, happiness of the society, happiness of the individual. Okay, and the just person, who will be considered as a person who is just, so the person who can resolve disputes, who can distribute goods, and who can, like, help out in meeting punishments. So reciprocal, distributive, and corrective justice have been explained or described henceforth. You can see that, right? So Plato's idea of justice was associated with interpersonal, whereas Aristotle's idea of justice is in general, it is associated with community specific, the larger society per se. So it gives us a general guideline when we speak of it. And Aristotle, he is explicitly clear that no science or area of knowledge should have conclusions, okay, that are more precise than the nature of the subject matter allows. All right, so this is how we can understand. So, narrow idea of justice was associated with what? The component of equality. Equality means the nature of harm you have done, similar harm should be caused to you, whether it is in the form of loss of your property, in the form of a fine, in the form of a punishment, okay, bodily punishment or whatever. But in the narrow idea of justice, equality should be meted out to you, whereby you are equally punished for the wrong or unjust act that you have done. That's narrow definition of justice. The broader definition of justice, according to Aristotle, is that you are creating a stable system of like laws, rules, regulations, and customs. The entire system of customs needs to be taken care of. It needs to be preserved. It needs to take care of the ultimate goal, and that is something which should be associated with the wholesome well-being, which should be associated with the happiness of the community by and large. Okay, so that is something which you can connect with. Okay, so I hope that's like done, all of you. Yeah. So Aristotle, he was very clear that no science or area of knowledge should have conclusions. No science should arrive at a conclusion, or area of knowledge should arrive at conclusion that are more precise than the nature of subject matter allows. Because when we are talking about a specific subject matter, a subject matter is always open for change. So we have to arrive at the insights as per the, we can say, domain, or we can say the content or the scope of the subject matter. We are arriving at the conclusion with respect to the scope of the subject matter or the domain of the subject matter, whereas truth can be beyond that, beyond the walls of the subject matter. It can be beyond the purview of the subject matter. That's how multidimensional aspects to truth may exist. All right. Now, so I hope you all have understood this given subsegment. So we are heading to the next dimension, which is associated with so I hope previous year question answer also you read and you found it very easy, because I had given you the previous year questions answers and I had requested all of you to read and come. No, sorry, not previous year question. God, I'm seriously tired. So I had given you the like questions and answers, and it was very simplistic. One quick reading of it would have fixed it. So I believe all of you read the questions, the last two questions. One was related to Tagore and last was related to Gandhi. Did you read it, all of you? Okay, so as like Anjali, Priya, Sumit, Ambesh, Nirmala, all of you are saying, Shreya, that you have read it. Was it simple? Was it doable? Did you find it like capable of completing it, right? It was easy, there was no frictions associated with it. Yeah, yeah. So that's why I said that when it comes to Indian philosophers and thinkers, I mean, first advantage you have is you are introduced to them beforehand because of history. It's Western philosophers and thinkers which creates a problem. Okay, and that is something which creates a problem in terms of interpretation. So that's what you are supposed to do. Yeah, after revising it two times it became quite easy. Yes, and bullet points, they are also quite helpful, definitely. Okay, now, so as we are moving ahead with Western philosophers and thinkers, we can start with Epicureanism. Now, Epicureanism, as the quotation just next to the image goes, it explains the, we can say, insight of Epicurus. The quotation says, if God listened to the prayers of men, all men would quickly have perished. Means if God was really listening to our prayers, everyone would have died. Why? Because what is the reason? So he's giving for. For is what? For means because. All those students who don't know this, you need to understand this, that this is also a linguistic expression, because they are forever praying for evil against one another, because human beings keep praying for like harm to each other, evil against each other. That's why it is proposed under Epicureanism. We all can see Epicurus is giving this insight, or Epicurus is proposing this given idea, that when he's discussing about this given possibility, that when we are talking about what kind of impact is generated, what kind of possibility is generated, yes, you can use this quotation, Anuishka, that is perfectly fine. Okay, so we can understand that he is saying that if all the human beings are asking for blessings against each other, like oh God, let me win the war. Imagine if Putin wins, what will happen to Ukraine? If Ukraine wins, what will happen to like a lot of soldiers who are coming from Russia? So like if India wins, what will happen to Pakistan? What if Pakistan like wins, what happens to India? If separatists win in India, what happens? If terrorists win in India, what will happen? If Indian army and paramilitary win, then so many people again will get impacted and killed. So the very idea of human beings, they create their own enemies and they fight with each other. So if God was listening to the prayers of everyone, people keep praying for so much of evil or harm or destruction to each other, so no one would have been alive, people would have died. Some people would have prayed, God, this country is very bad, let everyone in this country die. So if it was fulfilled, it would have been like really problematic, right, when we are talking about it. So that's why, with respect to this segment, Epicureanism, when we are speaking of it, we can see that it is not, it is suggesting that God is not a free guy. Okay, means he's not a free guy to entertain all these like kind of prayers and blessings. He's like, this is not what God is meant for." So he is coming up with some insightful perceptions related to what God is related to. So Epicurus, first and foremost, the time period 341 to 270 BC, he is a Greek philosopher. Hellenistic period, that's what we can connect him with. In Athens, Epicurus was found in the garden, and we can see Epicurus, he never married, no children. Okay, so quite a free guy, died at the age of 72 due to kidney stone. And then we can see this, so this is a miscellaneous information. What is important for all of you is that he regarded happiness and pleasure as the main goal, as the main goal of life rather than virtues. So he said, rather than focusing on virtues, you have to focus on happiness and pleasure. Now, is this happiness or pleasure devoid of virtues? Is it devoid of moral compass, moral principle? We need to understand this bit. भाई कौन बच्चा है जो इतना खुश है? There is some child who's so happy, after every few minutes is just pressing the happiness button. Ha 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 ha. So it's just like happiness is flowing every few seconds. I'm seeing happiness is just spreading in the class. I know that sometimes when I make some funny gestures or comments, it makes like sense, but someone is perennially happy. It's good, it's good to be so happy. So now when we are talking about the very component of what Epicurus says, okay, so Epicurus, he suggests that like he suggests the potential challenges. So he is talking about the given possibility associated with the component of, we can say, the fear of God. He is saying that fear of God, death, retribution and hell. Retribution means you will be punished in the hell for your crimes, the odd crimes you have done. All these things hold back human beings and it keeps them unhappy. So if you ask why people are scared or why people are unhappy, they'll be like, oh, I've done a sin and I am going to die in hell. Someone will be saying, oh, death is inevitable, I am going to die. Someone will be talking about fear of God, that God may not be very happy with me. So he said that these are the causes of human happiness. So he is saying how you should gain pleasure. Then he's talking about the sources of pleasure. So he says you can attain pleasure by having knowledge, by having good solid friendships. It seems he had very good friends, right? Because you can see he lost his family at a very young age. So and he neither was married and he was nor having children. So in such a situation, we can consider that this guy, he was glorifying friendship, but obvious. Okay. So every time you have to like think of friendship from philosophical perspective, you can see this given dimension. So when we are talking about the child has fulfilled the main goal of life, that is happiness. Yes, yes, yes. So Epicurean pleasure is based on knowledge. It is based on like friendship. It is living a virtuous and temperate life. Now, mind it, the goal is not virtue, but happiness is based on virtue. The pleasure principle is based on virtue and temperate life. Temperate life means a modest life. You're not into too much of carnal pleasure or sensual pleasure. You're not too much into like indulging in all forms of like, pleasures, which is just wasting your energy and time. Again, Epicurean teachings, if we speak of it, the greatest good is to seek modest pleasures. Modest pleasures means do not indulge in a lot of pleasure, sensory pleasure or material pleasure, and then only you can like attain a state of peace, tranquility implies peace. Please know these words. Do not always rely, SME, please tell me this word, ma'am, please tell me this word. Memorize this, especially if you cannot read Hindi or understand Hindi properly. Because if you are not aware of this possibility, this term tranquil was used in 2020 essay. The question that was raised in 2020 essay was associated with the component of tranquility. In fact, I can share that with all of you. So, just a second. With respect to this, the segment, just a second. The segment which I can share with all of you, this was the topic that was asked. It was mindful manifesto is the catalyst to a tranquil self. Mindful manifesto is the catalyst to tranquil self. So if a person reads this essay topic and is like, huh, I don't know how to like incorporate the content associated with the topic, that student will not be able to substantiate, right? So in, at least in Hindi, you can read the term Shanti, okay? But if you are unable to read Hindi, because you can read the Punjabi font or the Kashmiri font or the Bengali or Assamese or Tamil or Malayali font, but not Hindi, in that situation, you will get stuck. So best is you work upon your vocabulary. Tranquility only has single L. Okay. Again, freedom from fear. Okay. Absence from bodily pain. So these are the segments which you are supposed to reflect upon when we are discussing about Epicurus. Okay. Again, avoid constant desire of pleasure when we are talking about it. Okay. So avoid constant desire of pleasure or hedonism when we are speaking of this given subsegment. So with respect to this, when we are talking about it, definitely overindulgence in material pleasure or physical pleasure is something which corrupts the soul. It corrupts our capability of self control, it corrupts temperance, and it also indulges us into different types of vices, different types of crimes, different types of deviance. Okay, so you will see that whenever ED is like, trying to put a raid on any person's house, you'll see how overindulgence and hedonism has devastated the possibility of existence for many. Okay, so we can see that Epicurus, he is advocating absence of pain as the main goal of life. He is saying that the condition of mind should be to rise above pain and adversity, right? So that's what we can connect. Again, we can see Epicurus is further suggesting that achieving tranquility, again single L, okay, so achieving tranquility by having knowledge. When you have knowledge, you have limitation to desires, you try to contain your desires, you try to burn down unnecessary desires, you only focus on fulfilling or gratifying your basic needs. And with knowledge, you have that sense of peace, that sense of equanimity, that sense of tranquility in your existence. Okay, morality is something which should be constantly pursued, and that is something which gives pleasure. Okay, again, virtue has no intrinsic value. When we are talking about virtue, virtue is not important in itself, it is a derived value. Okay, it derives its value from what? So virtue derives its value from pleasure that is coming from virtuous action. Like, you are becoming virtuous, suppose when you are donating, suppose you are helping the poor, suppose you are supporting the needy, suppose you are purchasing books for the needy children, whatever. So in that situation, what is happening? We can see virtuous action is accompanying. It is virtuous action which is associated with bringing about a change or a breakthrough. So virtue, it does not have any intrinsic value per se, it is something associated with, we can consider the component of pleasure principle. So that is what we all can connect with. Okay, and we can also associate with avoid momentary and sensual pleasure. That's what he said, because if we are indulging in any sensual pleasure or momentary pleasure, it will inevitably cause pain to us in the long run, whether it is emotional pain, physical pain, economic pain, monetary pain, but some or the other form of pain is unavoidable if we are indulging in momentary or sensual pleasure. All right. Moving further ahead, we can also see mental pleasure. It arises from remembrance. Okay, when we are remembering like good things, past achievements. Okay, and when we are remembering future problems, challenges, it gives us pain. So discouraged learning, culture, civilization, okay, it can also disturb the peace of mind. Okay, so Epicurean philosophy is discouraging learning, culture, and civilization because that can disturb the peace of mind, because anything and everything related to cultural advancement may not be, we can say, conclusive. Okay, or it may not be always inspiring. But anyway, I would never endorse this given statement, because any generation which has a failed understanding of one's culture and civilization, that generation is considered as a failed generation, because has no idea of inheritance, no idea of evolution, and no idea of how to use the strengths of the past for the benefits of the future, for, like, seeking advices and guidance for the future. So it is very essential for all of us to have a definite level of motivation pertaining to our past. Okay, moving further ahead, we can see that it is important for us to acquire knowledge that can help to, rid oneself of religious fears, to help get rid of oneself from superstitions. Okay, it also helps us to get rid of the fear of gods, get rid of the fear of death. Okay, also he said that strong laws are desirable and strict punishments are desirable. And when we are talking about all these possibilities, when strong laws are there, strict punishments are there, then there is a just law, a justified, a fair law, a law which is promoting equality, and that will also contribute to human happiness. All right. So, with respect to this given perception, gods is the word which he has used. Vivek, if you are not aware of this fact, just like India, in Athens, Greece, there has been multitude of gods who were worshipped, gods and goddesses. Okay, it's just that the civilization was threatened and it got lost because of the, we can say, aggressive movements pertaining to Christianity and the frictions pertaining to Christianity and Islam. So it was basically the biblical religion which threatened the possibility of the traditional religion of Athens, Greece. And that's why gods, not God. Okay. When you know the history, when you know the civilization, you know why the term is used, you know the relevance of the term, how it is coming into existence. Then comes Stoicism. When we speak of it, Stoicism again is very important for all of you when we are discussing about it. So, in Stoicism, Zeno is the guy whom we are quoting. So, Zeno of Citium, the area from where Zeno can be connected is Citium. Okay, so with Zeno, like from 342 to 270 BC, when we are discussing about him, we can see that it's written that we have 2 ears, one mouth, so we should listen more than we say. Oh, one quotation which my grandpa loved to quote. He used to always say this. As a child, I was very peppy, very chirpy, constantly asking a lot of questions. Um, like, because my grandpa encouraged a lot of reading, so I used to read a lot, so I used to ask also a lot. And despite that, like whenever he used to be in a meditative state or reading some book, he used to quote this. Okay, that we have 2 ears, one mouth, so listen more and talk half of it. So that's something which you can connect with. Later on, one of my senior professors, when I was in graduation, repeated the same, and I was just reminded of grandpa. And the concept is coming none other than like Zeno speaking of it. So he is the, we can say, founding father of Stoicism. Okay, and when we are talking about Stoicism, we can understand that it is one of the core four principles. Okay, so four, we can say, schools of thought. When we are talking about four principal schools in Athens, ancient Athens. So, four principal schools. One school was around Plato, another school was around like Aristotle, another school was around, we can say, uh, Epicurus, and the fourth was around Stoicism. Okay, so Stoicism is very important when we speak of it. It flourished for almost 250 years. The importance of it is so much that even today we can see that Stoicism is being quoted in the world of philosophy, in the world of psychology also. It is like quoted when we are speaking of it, and it, like we can say, invited, it attracted people from all corners. We can see that when we are talking about Stoicism from Athens, so in Athens, it had different types of admirers. There were statesmen like Seneca, who was quite motivated by Stoicism. So statesman Seneca is also inspired by Stoicism, and we can say the slave Epictetus, Epictetus is also inspired by Stoicism, and then also Emperor Marcus Aurelius is also getting inspired by Stoicism. So you can very well connect that how Stoicism is inspiring people from all walks of life. Yes. So when we are talking about Stoicism, what is Stoicism and what is the essential ideas associated with Stoicism? When we reflect upon it, without the display of feelings, you're not expressing your feelings, or you are not complaining about it. You're just enduring with pain, you're enduring with hardship. That's what Stoicism means. Okay. So Stoicism or Stoic ethics, when I'm talking about it. So Stoic ethics, it is associated with developing indifference or developing a passive reaction to all kinds of external events. It is also associated with developing equanimity in the face of life's highs and lows. Okay. In this given situation, we can also see that, like, you know, uh, meanwhile, it stops. Anjali, what? No, no, no. Everything is perfectly fine from our end. Everything is fine from our end because I can see the system is functioning properly. Okay. Now, we can again see that life is according to nature. So, whatever we are living, it is as per nature. So, if we really want to have a balance in life, we need to accept suffering. We need to rationally observe the law, and we need to reduce our expectation, and thus the anger will get reduced. When do we get angry? There's a very beautiful expression associated with anger, which is said that it is a violent collision of hope and fury. Just reflect upon it. A violent collision of hope and not fury, reality. A violent collision of hope and reality creates anger. You want me to write it down? Violent collision of hope and reality creates anger. So when you have high hopes, when you have high expectation, and the reality is not matching it, that is something which is creating anger. So how to do away with anger? Reduce the expectation. When you reduce the expectation, there is no friction. There is nothing to experience the given possibility associated with what we are living or experiencing. Now, wisdom, when we speak of it, wisdom is the source of all virtues. All patterns of virtues exist in the dimension of wisdom. Again, we can see that Stoics, he promoted egalitarianism, and when he promoted egalitarianism, that's why you can see, I discussed that even like you can see the statesman, the slave, and the emperor all are believing in Stoicism. So slave Epictetus was the person who was believing in Stoicism. Why? Because Stoicism is based on the principle of egalitarianism. Everyone is equal, everyone is equal, including the slaves. They are also treated as equal. And with respect to the world is material, and the body and soul are made from different substances. It is not associated with this material world. We can say the creation of this body and the existence of this soul is different from the material reality, like wood, gold, metal, whatever we are surrounded by, the existence is different from it. So knowledge is coming from senses, and it is interpreted by mind. And God, when we speak of the idea of God, God is within us. And God is the source of all goodness. All forms of goodness that we experience, God is the source. Stoicism says that keep away from ourselves from greed. Yes, yes, you can connect with that also, Payal. So God is within us, and God is the source of all goodness. And God, if we are following God, we can attain the inner light. We can attain the possibility of, like, the given dimension associated with what we all are experiencing, related to, like us, that can be solved only if we believe in our inner goodness. Okay, that's what he is suggesting when we are talking about stoicism. So yes, he also talks about the impermanence of the world. He is talking about detachment from others, right? So when we are talking about relevance of stoicism, so with respect to his relevance, he discusses four types of problems. Okay, so four problems that he discussed. First problem he was discussing is anxiety. And he says that anxiety is nothing but, like, the constant fear we suffer from, that terrible things might happen to us. Okay, we are constantly thinking about what will happen, what can happen. It is completely opposite of having a planned strategic existence. When and There is an explanation to it, that when anxiety occurs, so it is said that anxiety emerges from the gap which is between, we can say, the fear what would happen or what can possibly happen, and the fear of, like, what should not happen. So what should not happen, what we are expecting, and the uncertainty of the future, the gap in between, is leading to the surfacing of anxiety, because we cannot control the future, and the negative thoughts associated with future is not getting suppressed. So that's why an individual experiences the oscillation of mood, whereby a person is getting disturbed. God knows what's going to happen. If this happens, then what will happen? Will I be able to cope up with it? This, that. So for this, he is suggesting, or the Stoics are suggesting, that for attaining calm, we need to think systematically, we need to think intelligently. So systematic and intelligent thinking, and systematically and intelligently, when we are thinking, okay, we need to crush all forms of hope. Only when we have hope from future, this good thing will happen, that sunny side will surface up. So those sunny tales disturb us. What he is suggesting is, how about you becoming courageous? Become courageous and try to come in terms with worst possible possibilities that can, like, unfold to you. So become courageous and be open to face worst worst possibilities. That's what he suggests. Okay, so be courageous. That's how you can overcome any form of anxiety, right? This is quite interesting and quite thought provoking when we are talking about this, right? So that's something which we all can connect with. Like, he even suggested one very interesting thing, that if you're scared of poverty, that, oh my god, what if I lose all the property, I lose this, I lose that? He said, do one thing, that every year for 1 week, sleep on a floor without mattress. Try to eat stale bread or go hungry. Okay, so stale bread, go hungry, just take one blanket to sleep on the floor. Try all this just for 1 week. Okay, and try to get imprisoned in the house, or, like, live in a small space for 1 week. It will train you to survive in anything. And when you learn how to survive in anything, you are free from anxiety and you lead a happy life. Okay, so that's what he said. Be courageous, face the worst, and be ready to face it, and then work upon good acts, work upon ethical acts. Everything will be taken care of. Okay, so that is something which you can connect with this given dimension. Again, when we are, so basic thing is courage. Have courage to face the worst possible. You will be through from your anxiety. Second thing he is talking about is fury, anger. when we are talking about it. So he's saying, why is fury happening? Fury or anger is nothing but a dangerous indulgence. And this dangerous indulgence, as I said, he said that it is a piece of stupidity. It's a dangerous indulgence. It's a complete incorrect picture of what we are experiencing. It is nothing but a violent collision of hope and reality, as I said. Okay. So this is what fury is all about. Okay. And he said that we don't shout out everything that happens to us. Okay. And every time we are not shouting out every time wrong things are happening to us. Okay. So only when we are sad and the sadness is unexpected, then we get angry. Okay. Sad plus unexpected. So unexpected sadness is creating anger in us, right? So what should be done to resolve it? He said, expect less from life. Expect less from life. If you expect less from life and people around you, you will not be sad. Okay. So this is how you overcome the second problem in your life. I hope that's again like something which is creating a breakthrough for all of you. Third thing which you can talk about is associated with paranoia. Paranoia. Okay. When we are speaking of paranoia, so with respect to paranoia, he says that it is like FOMO, fear of missing out. In the similar manner, like paranoia is something whereby you are not having a fear of missing out, it's just the opposite. You feel you are the worst sufferer in this world. All wrong things have been chosen and designed for you. And you are the one who is singled out for every terrible thing. So, singled out, sorry, singled out for every terrible thing. Singled out for every terrible thing. When a person considers this component of paranoia, a person feels that I am the one on whom Lady Fortuna is not, as I told, that Athens believed in a lot of gods and goddesses. So, Lady Fortuna is one of them. So, it was considered that Lady Fortuna, who is associated, the goddess of fortune, she is not happy with us, and that's why like wrong things are happening, and that's why things are not happening in our favor. That's how things were perceived by, we can say, stoics when we are talking about the component of paranoia. So it was considered like, we can say, a terrifying mix. Okay. A terrifying mix. We experience life in a terrifying mix of, we can say, generous things also happening and randomly spiteful things also happening. We did not expect why something wrong is happening, but randomly spiteful. When suddenly someone uselessly complained, okay, and suddenly there was some grace, you got a lottery ticket. So life is a mix of generous things happening and randomly spiteful things happening. Okay. So thinking that, oh, life is imperfect, or life is not kind, or we are the ones who are chosen for all wrong things, or constantly choking oneself to death, no, you should not think like that. Anything can happen. Stoic says that there is a possibility that you are like getting into a beautiful job, a perfect relationship, and the very next moment while eating food and you are having fish, the fish bone chokes in your throat and you are dying. So life is highly unpredictable, okay, when we are speaking of this given possibility. And that's why he is saying that you should just respect whatever you are receiving in life rather than demanding too much. Okay. So you should never believe in the gifts of fortune. That's the solution he offers. So never believe in the gifts of fortune. Never believe in the gifts of fortune. Fortune, or rather Lady Fortuna, to be specific. And what are the gifts of Fortuna? So it can be money, power, fame, good body, health. Okay. Money, power, fame, health. Do not trust any of it. Okay. A love, how to miss the most dangerous one, right? So never believe that this is something associated with this given possibility. Paranoia is associated with singled out for every terrible thing in life. You are the chosen one for all wrong things that should happen to someone. Okay, that's what paranoia implies. Some people feel that they are the ones who are suffering from it. Okay, so that's, you can connect with this given dimension. Girl says one will get what one deserve and Krishna will protect one already had. Yeah, Gita says that definitely. Okay, yeah. So like you can get inspired by stoicism when we speak of this. When we don't ask why me during happiness, why ask why we are in pain? Yes, so very true. That's also associated with stoicism, to speak of it. And last but not the least, loss of perspective, because we are talking about four problems. So relevance of stoicism is seen in four problems, so that is associated with loss of perspective. And in the component of loss of perspective, we all can see that stoicism suggests that we naturally exaggerate our self importance. So exaggerate our self importance. So he said that rather than exaggerating your own self importance, I am this, you don't know who I am, you don't know what I'm capable of. Okay. So rather than exaggerating one's own self importance, because that is something which can create a possibility of, we can say, getting stressed and panicked when things are not happening as per your wish. Okay. So do away with stress and panic, reduce your own level in your own eyes. So solution is what? Reduce your own level in your own eyes. Okay, so reduce your own level in your own eyes. So but if we want to help others, then we need money as well as power. Atharv, when you are saying that uh, for helping others you need money and power, so how about that lady from Pune? I am forgetting her name. Sindhu Tai probably was her name. So this lady, she was a beggar, and she just saw that there were street urchins and, helpless children around her. So whatever she was getting from begging, she started feeding them. Animals who were suffering from hunger, she started feeding them. People started taking notice of it, that this lady, whatever she is getting, whatever frugal amount or little she is having, she is not consuming it all. She is like giving to people who are suffering around her. If someone is sick, if someone is not keeping well, if there are children who are we can say helpless, she is standing for everyone. So that inspired her to get a lot of donations from other quarters. Interesting fact of her past was that her husband had kicked her out when she was pregnant, because he went into a relationship with another woman, and because there was no one to take care of her, there was lack of nutrition and all those complications, because of which she lost her child also. The child died, and in such a situation she was serving others, she was exercising compassion and benevolence. And because of that, what happened was that later on, the children, the orphans whom she adopted, she took care of them, and people kept doing charity, standing out for her, because they saw that this woman is committed genuinely to help others. So bit by bit, more help poured in. More than 30 children have been raised by her, who are doing very good in different walks of life. Someone is a doctor, someone is a lawyer, someone is a professor. So she has raised amazing children. In this old age, her husband also got back to her and sought forgiveness and said that, when you can adopt so many children, are you open to adopt me also, because I need the motherly care and I need someone to hold on to me, and I'm really sorry for all the sins that I have committed. And can you have that neutral approach, forget about the fact that once I was your husband and I misbehaved. And she acted with magnanimity, and she took him in, and she took care of him also, just like the other children that she was taking care of. So when you are saying this thing, I think it was Vaibhav who raised this question, that if we don't have money or we don't have power, just by having the intent, we cannot really help. So it's not money or power, it is actually the intent or the will, right? So that's how we all can connect with. So till the time would not come back. But during that time, I ate around 10 toffees. Oh God, oh God, Rakshan, that's something. If this is what has happened, that your uncle told you to take care of the shop, and till the time he doesn't come back, you just had to take care of the shop, and you ate around 10 toffees. 10 toffees is something which is creating cognitive dissonance in you, because your inner sense of right and wrong, it has guided you that what you did was incorrect. Howsoever small the act was, you did something wrong which should not have been done. And that's why this cognitive dissonance happening, that crisis of conscience that you are suffering from. On one hand, the momentary selfishness, or the, well, we can say the pleasure of the body guided you that let me have few candies, what difference will it make? He has not counted all the candies in the jar while I'm taking care of the shop. So if you have done this given dimension, Rakshan, the possibility to save yourself from this given situation is, it barely will cost you 5 or 10 rupees. Pay that money to him. Say that because you were not there, keeping that money was not valid. So when you were gone, I had eaten 10 candies, and I thought that when you will be back, I'll just give that money to you, so that you are aware that when you gave me the responsibility to take care of the shop, I took care of it, but I was feeling hungry, so I had few candies, and this is the money for it, and say thank you. And if you are having that cognitive dissonance, you can support more money, give 15 rupees, okay, give something extra. And that is something which you can what about the slaps he gets? The slaps are lesser than the inner slaps he is experiencing. Okay, cognitive dissonance is worse than like the outside world manifestation of it. External locus of control can be fixed, but once a person starts losing grip over himself or herself, bit by bit our sense of acceptance to crime happens. First we slip on smaller radars, and then we slip on bigger radars. So fear of punishment should never discourage a person from owning up what like wrong has happened, and there is a necessity to fix it. All right. So now, with respect to this given possibility, when we are further moving ahead, so in paranoia, can we connect with never beg for love, never believe in luck? Uh, that's again a very strong language to say never beg for love. Why would you beg for love if it is love? Love is a mutual and effortless process, no? So why to beg for it? So the language itself, I would refrain from that. Okay, now we are moving to the medieval times. So Stoicism, I hope all of you are able to understand. And from Stoicism, as we move to medieval times, I hope everything is understood well. Everyone has understood this, right? So if no one is looking at your doings, then can we do something that is not acceptable? No, because it is all about integrity. I have taught you what is integrity. Okay, so when we are talking about integrity, integrity is something which is associated with like utmost or highest level of honesty, being honest even when no one is watching. So Sunil, you need to revise the chapter of integrity, civil services values. Okay, the question is an answer associated with what needs to be fixed. Again, why wouldn't you beg for love? It's love. No, Ravi, you don't beg for love if it is love. Only when there is an emotional dependence, and only when the other person is not realizing the necessity, the effortless necessity, the necessity that a person is suffering from, it is then that a person has to beg. Okay, recalling or like being there is different from begging. Begging is too strong a word. Begging creates dependence and a subservient position. In love there is nothing subservient. Okay, so that's there. So ek tarafa pyar bhaiya. Okay, now let's get back seriously to this given segment pertaining to like medieval era. Okay, so Anjali, I mean, like ek tarafa pyar, who writes that? All right, so I hope all of you are getting bit by bit the insights. Stoicism is getting clear now. Getting to medieval philosophers and thinkers. In medieval philosophers and thinkers, first you need to understand the time period is between 5th to 16th century. And this is the time when we can see Athens or the Athenian civilization, the Roman Empire, all of it is falling. And as Roman Empire is falling, we can see Christianity is rising. Okay, so rise of Christianity. And because Christianity will rise, till now religion had nothing to do with ethics, but now religion will interfere with ethics. So at this stage, you will see that church and religion will start playing an important role by intervening in ethics, trying to define what is ethical and what is unethical. And that is why we all can see that till now what we were discussing was not seen from the scanner of religion. It was considered as secular ethics. From here the idea of ethics will start getting connected to religion. And that's why you can see that when we are talking about this idea during this time period, the thinkers were stuck in the debate between theism and atheism. Theism, when we are talking about it, you are believing in God. Atheism, when you are not believing in God. So theism and atheism, the debate started between them. So theists were believing that God is there everywhere. God is making everything happen. It is God's plan that is determining everything, and that is something which was mentioned in Bible, in Quran, in all forms of commandments of God. That is what was written. Then the atheists, those who did not believe the God, they raised the question that if God is so powerful, if God is so benevolent, why is so much of crime happening? Why is God letting so much of evil exist in this world? If God is so strong and benevolent and all powerful and watching all the given possibilities, all right. So, uh, when we are speaking of this given sub segment, we all can see that this question was haunting the theists. How to respond to this question? That if God is omnipotent and omnipresent and all strong, then how come the Roman Empire is, like, constantly collapse? Sorry, though the possibility of Christianity is coming under the scanner, and we are like questioning the authenticity or the validity of religion per se. To this, what we see is that Saint Augustine, he came up with the answer related to it. He said that he gave this concept of free will. Okay, and in his concept of free will, he explained that why and how like evil is existing in this world. He said that God created human beings as rational animals, as rational creatures. And because human beings are rational creatures, they have the ability to decide between what is right and what is wrong. And when something is happening, okay, by the choice, the incorrect choice by man, we cannot blame God for it, because God is not making the incorrect choice. God has bestowed the choice on human being, that you can choose how to behave. Okay, so it is the whatever evils are existing in this world, it is nothing but the act of human beings with respect to their past, how they have behaved in their past, that has resulted into the problems which we are suffering from in the present. He also discussed about the doctrine of karma. Okay, he said, what is evil? Evil is absence of God. When in your decisions, in your choices, God is not there. In the similar manner, that when we ask what is darkness, darkness is absence of light. In the similar manner, what is evil? Evil is absence of God. And what is God? God is associated with the, like we can say, noble choices that we are supposed to make, but we choose not to make it. Okay, so he's saying that evil is not an entity in itself. It's not like a ghost or something like that. Evil is not an entity. Evil is all associated with the absence of God. Whatever remains due to wrong decisions in the absence of God. So it is like human beings have the ability to take decisions, and if that ability is taken away from the human beings, they will be reduced to the status of an animal, right? So human beings are human only because they have the choice to exercise. This is an idea which I can connect also with Mahabharata, what Saint Augustine is saying. Okay, that's why you see the image of Saint Augustine, you can see that Christ is there on his heart, and you can see there is a light like on the back of his head. You can see that. This is the image that is drawn on the walls of one of the churches related to Saint Augustine, which is like he's getting the blessings of God. And you can see in the heart, there is the image of like Christ, which is drawn over there. So when we are talking about the component of free will, we can also connect it with Mahabharata, whereby Draupadi, she like rebukes Krishna that you are the avatar, you are God yourself. So why did you not change the mindset of Duryodhana? If you would have desired, you could have avoided this war, you could have avoided all that has happened. So for that, Krishna responded that I have an inability to do so. I can't do that. I cannot avoid the war, and I only have the power to persuade. And that's why I went to Duryodhan and I had requested him that you just give 5 villages and let us avoid the war, the, like, destruction of so many villages, destruction of so many human beings, so many lives. Let us, like, do away with it. So I only have the power to persuade. We are discussing about human beings. Human beings have conscience. So when they have conscience, we can guide them to right and wrong. The final decision has to be made by the choice of the human beings, and whatever choices they make shall always bear repercussions. No choice is without repercussion. Every choice is borne by repercussion. So he said that if I take away the, we can say, ability of choice, there will be nothing human left in the being. The being is a human because there is choice. And that's why in Bhagavad Gita, you find a sentence, it's written, Yatham Ichhasi Tatham Kuru. Okay, so Yatham Ichhasi Tatha Kuru, it means that as you wish, so you may do. Means you have the choice to act upon your wishes. Okay, so do as you wish in simple language. And what is do as you wish? It is the free will. The choice is yours. The choice to act upon good deeds and bad deeds, the choice is completely yours. The sufferings that you may be suffering from, the sufferings are associated with your previous karmas. The choice you have made in the past are associated with your present sufferings. And even Krishna, as an avatar, he suffered for his misdeeds. The way he died was like a simpleton, like a plain man. He was sleeping in the forest, and we can see that the hunter mistook him for a deer, and he shot in his feet the arrow, and that is how Krishna died. He just died like an ordinary person, and that was because of his misdeeds during the war at Kurukshetra. So he was cursed by Gandhari that you will also die like a helpless person in isolation where there is no one to help you. Your avatar status is not going to save you or help you. And then he accepted that also smilingly. Okay, that's the beauty of Krishna's smile. Like you can see that um, as a child he lost his mother, right? And he was raised by foster parents. Then he had to leave the foster parents also and like move to a kingdom. Then he had to work as a statesman. Then he again gets relocated to Dwarka. So many things, so many turbulences keep happening in his life, but he teaches us that whatever the situation might be, we should accept pain and pleasure with equanimity, with a smile, with a like a blissful state, with a state of equanimity, and we shall pull through everything. Okay, anyway, so the component of free will is something which like you can see also in the pattern of not just Abrahamic religion in the form of commandments, whether it is Judaism, Christianity, Islam. We can also see this component existing in Sanatanism, that is the religions pertaining to Indian origin, that is Buddhism, Jainism, Sikhism, Hinduism. You can see that that is also somewhere discussing about free will, and the free will is making us human in nature when we are talking about this given subsegment, right? So that's something which all of you can connect with when we are talking about it. So Saint Augustine, when we are talking about him very briefly, so with respect to this, we can say that what is Saint Augustine saying? So Saint Augustine, he says that has given God has given or rather God has created human beings as rational creatures, thinking, feeling, right? So as rational creatures, it means they can distinguish, they can distinguish between good and bad, between good and bad. God has given complete freedom. God has given free will or complete freedom. to choose and perform actions. So, if a person does something wrong, it is his responsibility. It is his responsibility, and the act remains with him. Remains with him. This is doctrine of karma. Doctrine of karma. Okay. So the act remains with him, not with God. Okay. Similarly, he is talking about the idea of just war. When we are talking about it, he is discussing war because this is the time period when you see Christianity and Islam are constantly at war with each other for annexation of territory, for expansion of territory. During 2020 COVID, there was a TV series which became very famous, especially because Imran Khan was watching. It was a Turkish TV series called Ertugrul Ghazi. I don't know how many of you were aware of it, but in Ertugrul Ghazi also, this component was like taken up. How Christianity and Islam are waging war against each other, more like a tribal level of warfare that was happening. So he like brought that up. And St. Augustine said that Christians should be pacifists. Okay, he said that Christians should be pacifists. And who is a pacifist? Why did he say that? So pacifists, like pacifist, we can consider a person who rejects violence, who rejects violence as a means to achieve justice, as a means to achieve justice. Right. So Christians should be pacifists, what he said, that they should not try to like get into any form of waging war or any kind of friction or like any kind of crusade, any kind of like factionism per se. That's what he suggested. So like he said that however peaceful is the face of the grave wrong that would be only stopped by violence would be a sin. Means whatever wrong is happening to you, if you have to stop it by again responding by violence, it again is sin. So violence is the way the world is like living, and we all can see this. But the world is not existing without violence. Whether we think of Arjuna talking about the idea of violence happening in the world as he is discussing in Mahabharata, or Karl Marx saying that there is no perk without blood, every perk is coming with a blood. So we all can see that this component of war is something which like we can all connect with like what Saint Augustine is bringing to context, right? So that's something which all of you can associate with. Then we all can reflect upon Thomas Aquinas. Thomas Aquinas is also virtue ethicist. Remember this term we had used for Aristotle, for Plato, for Socrates. Okay, so virtue ethicist. He is the person who's saying that ethics is the first principle of action. Ethics is the first principle of action. Ethics is the first principle of action. This is what you can reflect upon when these people are, when he is talking about. Okay. So he is believing in 7 cardinal virtues. 7 cardinal virtues. So the like 4 virtues will come from Plato. So Plato, he is seeking 4 virtues, and after the 4 virtues plus he is talking about hope, faith and charity. You can say hope, faith and charity is nothing but coming from religion, right? Hope, faith and charity are 3 essential values or virtues which are spoken in religion. In the absence of it, you cannot be considered truly religious. So 3 are coming from religion, and the 4 virtues which are of Plato, that is, do you remember that? Wisdom, right? Temperance, courage. Okay, so courage or fortitude or valor, whatever you call it, and the components, the possibility of justice. So all of it clubbed together. Okay, so these are the 7 virtues in Christianity that he lays down. He says that ethics applies only to deliberate human actions. If a person cannot be like punished for unintentional mistakes. Now, this is something very tricky. If I say that for unintentional mistake, should we blame a bureaucrat? So you'll realize that something similar to what Thomas Aquinas says is also followed in bureaucracy. If there is some unintentional mistake committed by a bureaucrat, because see, we have to keep the bureaucrats motivated, not discourage that at any moment I can be punished, at any moment my power can be snatched. So for keeping the motivations high related to the bureaucrats, you see that the bureaucrats are encouraged, they are encouraged to take up the insights associated with seeking forgiveness. So they can be given a warning. Along with a warning, there are possibilities of encouraging them to seek forgiveness. So warning can be there, the possibility of seeking forgiveness can be there. Okay, there can be a possibility associated with reflecting upon their mistakes. There can also be a possibility associated with what they are indulging or experiencing in. We can also further substantiate the possibility associated with we can say the when we are talking about the like segment of a civil servant, he can be on a high side, be suspended with a warning by the senior. So you can guide, you can motivate, you can mentor, you can punish mildly, but you cannot get into punishing severely for unintentional mistakes to a civil servant. That is something which we all can consider. Okay, so that is something which you can consider. There was this case of HC Gupta, whereby first a 3-year punishment was given and later on it was nullified. So the reason is this given segment, that it will discourage the civil servant to always be motivated towards honesty, because an honest civil servant, if is punished at some unintentional mistake, that will break down the confidence of the civil servant when we are speaking of it. Again, you can understand this given possibility when we are talking about it, that but in the world of law, when we are talking about it, that if there is a foreigner visiting your country and the person has committed a crime, so while the person commits the crime and the person says I was unaware of the law, can it act, can it be considered as a reason for excuse? You will realize no, it is not entertained as a reason of excuse, because in the world of law, as like in first year LLB, our professor had said that ignorance of law cannot be an excuse. So we cannot consider that when a person is saying that, oh, I'm sorry, I was not aware of it, the ignorance of law cannot work or cannot act as an excuse. You need to understand that bit. Okay, so he is also discussing about a specific, you can consider the theory which is associated with this given principle. So first comes human laws. Human laws are like laws associated with like constitution or laws that human beings make. Okay, constitution, CRPC, you can see IPC, all of it, right? Then comes natural laws. Natural laws, like we can say theory of gravity, like Newton's law of motion, all that. Okay, so law of motion. Then we can connect it with divine laws. Divine laws are associated with religious books, the religious texts or religious books. And then we can connect it with eternal laws. Now, this is the cliched thing which many of you might not be aware of. So, eternal laws are, we can consider, laws of the universe. And eternal laws, which are laws of the universe, it is considered that only God knows it. Only God knows it. With respect to this, Stephen Hawking had made a comment. Okay, so Stephen Hawking, he said that I'm interested to know He said that I'm interested. Sorry. So Stephen Hawking, he said that I am interested to know it, know an equation or theory related to the eternal law. Okay. So I'm interested to know an equation or theory of eternal law, because one theory or one law can explain everything in the world. Okay. Theory of eternal law, as it can explain everything, explain everything. Everything that's happening around us can be explained with the eternal law. So eternal laws, they do exist, as accepted even by the great scientists, like we can consider Stephen Hawking. And this component of eternal law can also be connected with like Ramanujam, okay, the celebrated mathematician Ramanujam, who never got a formal training of mathematics. He was never formally exposed to mathematics. And yet, you see that when Ramanujan is like coming up with mathematical formulas and principles, everyone is like, how can you solve it? How can you arrive at it? How can you even think from that specific perspective, which is not in any book, which is not existing as a principle anywhere? To which he said that when I sleep and as I think about mathematical principles and as I sleep, it is more like a reverie, it is more like a meditational existence. In that process, I see the Tripura Sundari. Tripura Sundari is the mother goddess, okay, who is worshipped in Assam as Kamakhya Devi or Kamakshi Devi. She is considered as Shodashi in other parts of India when you worship Dash Mahavidya. So she is one of the Dash Mahavidyas. So he said that, and in southern parts of India, she is referred as Tripura Sundari, different names for the same mother goddess, and she is one of the 10 Mahavidyas. So he said that it is Tripura Sundari who blesses me with the pieces of wisdom to understand the universe and the patterns of universe, and all the ideas keep dawning upon me. It is also considered men who are born with any such brilliance, they die very young, like Swami Vivekananda. You can see him. Okay. Similarly, like Ramanujan. So they fizzle off fast because the energy inside them is burning too fast. The, like, the possibility of getting closer to the universal or the eternal law, okay, it consumes a lot of energy of their existence, and that's something which is considered, which impacts their wholesome possibility of existence. So anyway, when we are, and she's no, like Tripura Sundari is associated with Dash Mahavidya, not Ma Saraswati Payal. Okay, I will not mince facts. So as it is documented, so there is some possibility of eternal law with which mathematicians like Ramanujan, or we can say scientists like Stephen Hawking, also accept or agree with. All right, so that's what you can consider. So, with respect to this given subsegment, as we are further moving ahead, we can like substantiate something more associated with what he had to discuss. So, Thomas Aquinas, when we are discussing about him, he is the man who's discussing about the concept first and foremost associated with the just war theory. Very briefly, if I speak of just war theory, okay, so just war theory. So in just war theory, he discussed about, like, the principles that should be followed before, after, and during war. Okay, the principles to be followed before, after, and during war. Remember, in medieval and ancient India, to a certain extent, it was followed. So the moment the clarion of war has been blown, then only you'll start the war. The moment the clarion of the war has been blown in the evening, you like contain the war and you just retire to your homes. You don't continue to fight. Okay. So there were rules that were followed with respect to war. In the similar manner, there were certain rules, regulations, or principles that were supposed to be followed during war. And many thinkers and theorists have contributed to this just war theory. Okay, so many thinkers, theorists can be associated with it. All right, we can also connect it with like just war theory with Saint Augustine. Along with Saint Augustine, we can think of Thomas Aquinas. We can connect with Geneva Convention. Geneva Convention, all of it speaks of just war theory, right? Geneva Convention, you will study in IR, so connect it with IR. Okay, so few concepts he said associated with the just war theory. So what was his just war theory? Very briefly, if I can put 2 3 principles for all of you. So just war theory, with respect to it, he shared that war should be the last resort, should be the last resort. One should never glorify war. One should never glorify war. It should be treated as a tragic necessity. All right, after this, the next segment which you can think is the expected good must outweigh, must outweigh the cost of killing, the cost of killing and destruction. Okay, so the expected good means when you are leading to so much of killing, so much of destruction, you are waging a war, you should see that the overall benefit you are gaining from the war is outweighing the loss that you are suffering in the form of like human lives and the like goods, the articles, the destruction of property. So the expected good should be much larger if you are putting something at stake as big as war. Again, a war should be a defense against aggression, a defense against aggression. It should be a defense against aggression or an attempt to stop atrocities. Okay, so that's what you would be talking about it. Examples from World War One and World War Two, you can think of that. Who's stopping you from dealing with that given possibility, right? And we use this theory of just war in Russia and Ukraine. I mean, like anything in present IR, whenever we discuss about war, war is what? A large scale formal conflict. When you announce a war, it is different from conflict. There can be a lot of conflict relationship between India and like Pakistan, but it's not a war. War is when it is declared, it is formal nature of conflict, the size is huge, the you can say the investments are much greater, the loss of life, the loss of property is far more greater, there is much more at stake. And yes, it is something which is like going to etch the line in the history of the country related to, we can say, the foreign policy as well as how the relationship articulated between the two nations. So one has to be very careful before thinking about a war. Anyway, with respect to this, we can also now connect with Machiavelli. When we are heading to Machiavelli and what Machiavelli suggested, okay, we all can connect his insights pertaining to like the prince. So Machiavelli wrote the book The Prince, okay, and as he wrote this book The Prince, it is a small book, not a very big book, okay. In this, it's more like a guide book associated with the do's and don'ts which a freshly appointed king should follow at all times. So his approach, you will find, is teleological. Okay, his approach is teleological. What is teleological? Do you remember, people? I discussed this in the first chapter. So teleological was associated with goal oriented approach, right? Good, good, very good. So goal oriented, or we can connect it with ends based approach. Ends based approach. So this man, when we are speaking of Machiavelli, uh, someone compared Chanakya with Machiavelli, like, and said that Chanakya is the Machiavelli of the East. To which, when Weber visited India and when he explored the possibilities of Chanakya and read his theories, he was like, oh, not even distantly. When we speak of Chanakya, he is way above Machiavelli in terms of statesmanship, shrewdness, how to craft out a war, and the possibilities associated with how a king ought to dominate in a given region, not area, in a region. So he said that we cannot even distantly compare Machiavelli. Machiavelli is too, like, we can say, tiny in comparison with what Chanakya is in terms of the world of statescraft ship, or, like, the statesmanship that he is bringing in with a lot of shrewdness, even if needed, even cruelty, exercising cruelty if needed, because there was severe punishment. See, whether the punishments were exercised or not, that is not documented, but in forms of punishment there are severe punishments, like frying a person alive, okay, which, like, Chanakya has documented in his forms of punishment. Whether a person was really ever fried alive or not, that's not, like, documented or heard of. But if you are talking about such a possibility, you can understand that how a person is very, very severe in terms of attaining the objectivity of, like, transparency, a corruption free society, maintaining utmost level of law and order, and people, like, getting intimidated by the king, not rebelling against the king. You can understand all those possibilities. So you will also read, like, when I'm discussing about Chanakya, I'll be discussing about his Raj Mandala theory later when I'm talking about probity in governance and all that. So his Raj Mandala theory, connecting it with IR, and the string of pearl theory, which is now followed by China. Okay. So a lot of policies, a lot of insights which he had spoken is still, we can consider, like, important for all of us. Anyway, so when we are talking about the components pertaining to Machiavelli, what he was suggesting, so Machiavelli, he said, he spoke of realpolitik. And what is realpolitik? It is, we can consider the politics which is based on circumstances, not ideology. So politics which is based on circumstances, circumstances, rather than ideology, rather than ideology. All right. So for example, we can think of Bismarck, we can think of Napoleon, we can think of Hitler. Present day, we can think of China. When you are not going for an ideal war, when you are not following the ideals pertaining to warfare techniques, okay, so when you are only focused on the circumstances, you are not following any ideology. You can think of Gandhiji, and you can say that Gandhi didn't believe in realpolitik, didn't believe in real politic, right? You can also connect with, when we are speaking of it, you can see that Gandhi, he won't stir from non-violence and truth. He was like, I'm not going to compromise with my ideology. So his ideology, when we are speaking of Gandhiji's ideology, so it can be associated with non-violence, it can be associated with, like, ahimsa, and that is non-violence, and then satyagraha, and the quest for truth. Okay. So he said that I won't, like, stir from it. Ideology is most important, right? That's what he considered. But when we are speaking of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, so Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose was open for observing realpolitik. He believes in realpolitik. Okay, so believes in realpolitik. And that's why you can see that he is like open to even shake hands with Hitler. Okay, so that's why he met Hitler, and he is ready to meet Hitler and shake hands with him and be a party to his insights if it is associated with like the freedom of India. So as per the situation, when you are open to change, when you are ready to change your ethical stance, okay, that is something which is making you believe in real politics. Okay, so as per the situation, as per the situation, when one is ready to change the ethical stance, right? So that is something which you can connect with the component of real politic, when you can become good or bad as per the suitability of the situation. Okay, so you can become good or bad as per the situation, right? So it is the politics or the diplomacy which is based on the situation, or that is associated with the given circumstances, rather than we can say particular ideologies, or we can say ethical premises which are taken in consideration when we are talking about real politics. In this given subsegment, you can understand that Machiavelli, MacIver, I was thinking MacIver is a sociologist, I'm so sorry. So Machiavelli, he is having a very negative connotation for human nature and mindset. Okay, he did not approve of human nature and human mindset. He was like, I don't trust human beings. They are like very low and ungrateful people. That's what he believed. Low and ungrateful. That's what he believed. Human nature is associated with this. So that's why he encouraged the prince to keep a safe distance and regulate the nature of human beings. He considers that how do you control the people? So control the people with respect to army. When you control the people with army, it is then that you will be able to maintain law and order. He said that maintain the qualities of fox and lion. So you can see when we are talking about fox, fox can control crabs. It can fight with crabs, but it cannot fight with wolves. Whereas lion, it cannot fight with crabs and it can fight with wolves. So he is saying that when we are talking about the people, a king should have quality of both. A king should have the quality of both. And when I say the quality of both, means the quality of lion as well as fox. Both is needed for a king if a king is supposed to govern like, efficiently or effectively. That's what he suggests. So he says, Machiavelli says that human nature of like the human beings are quite like ungrateful. They are very lowly creatures. So prince is supposed to consider this nature always before taking a decision. And that's why maintaining hegemony is what Machiavelli is endorsing when we are speaking of him. Okay, so he is saying that hatred is gained as much as good work as by evil. If you are thinking that you will be loved by people, no, you can be hated by them even when you are doing good work. So hatred is gained as much as much hatred is gained as much by good work as by evil. So he said that's why a king should not be under the pressure to, like, always be goody good to people. Okay, that's there, which we all can connect with. So he said that you don't have to bother to always be nice to people. Focus on maintaining the possibility of control over the people. That's what he suggested. Now, this inspires me to another question. Okay, with this given subsegment. So suppose as a civil servant, okay, as a civil servant, if you are in a condition where you have to choose where you have to choose. Mind the word choose between fear and love towards people. Okay. So you are in a condition where you have to choose. You have a choice. You cannot exercise both. So you have to choose between fear or love, okay, towards people. So which one would you choose and why? Which one would you choose? Yes, people, start. What would be your choice? You cannot go for both, Ria. That smartness everyone could have exercised. You should pay attention to the board. It's clearly written that you have to choose one. Yes, I could see that, Shweta and Rashmi. Okay, all right. A lot of you are coming up with a lot of solutions. Okay, so I'm reading your answers constantly. What everyone is coming up with as a solution, that what they would be choosing. We must spread love. We should always choose love first. Love. Okay, this. Okay, all right. Now, so please understand this very thoroughly when you get such a question. You have to choose. First and foremost, you will definitely declare that a civil servant should try to keep a balance between both. But if both are not possible, okay. So ideal condition, you will be discussing that ideal condition is to choose both. Is to choose both. But if one has to be chosen, but if one has to be chosen, then it should be what? It should be fear. Why fear? What is the logic of choosing fear? Because please understand your job. Okay. Your job is associated with maintaining law and order. Maintaining law and order. It is not associated with seeking appreciation and acceptance. Seeking appreciation and acceptance is secondary. Is secondary. The prime issue is maintaining law and order. Okay. So for example, there is a, like, let's say a riot like situation, a communal riot. You cannot fold hands and say, people, please be quiet, don't try to hit each other. Someone will hit you instead. Okay. If you are announcing it, there is a fair shot that someone will throw a little bomb or a petrol bomb in your direction. Okay. So when you have to maintain law and order, you have to go coercively. You have to exercise fear. Okay. Please understand this also. Fear is the precursor of love. Sometimes by exercising fear also you can generate love. You can exercise love. Sometimes for saving us, our mother hits us. As a child, we are constantly going and trying to touch fire or doing something like that, or we are like playing with a knife or something like that. There's a fair chance we'll be scolded very badly. Okay. Or maybe we can be hit lightly and the knife can be taken. Because when you are really loving, to a certain extent there has to be a tinge of fear. Even in a relationship, there are two partners, and like, let's say, if there is absence of fear, a person will become lewd. A person can take the other one lightly, or may get into an extramarital, or may, abuse or misbehave with the person publicly, or respond in a specific manner that the person is being treated very lightly. So there is a very famous quotation which was given by Tulsidas in Ramcharitmanas, that bhay bhin hohu na preeti. Bhay bin hohu na preeti means without fear, you cannot generate love. There has to be a tinge of fear to keep the love afloat. Okay. So you need to understand that when you are associated with this given dimension, you have to exercise to a certain extent the component of fear, because we need to understand what is your job. Okay. In public interest, Okay, in public interest, you have to reflect upon this given possibility of, like, constantly working towards the betterment of the people, the larger good of the people. For the larger good of the people, for public interest, if you can control, if you can maintain law and order, if you can maintain good governance by generating fear, so be it. So be it. Okay, like for example, do you remember during COVID there was a very famous slogan which became a meme also? मार के तोड़ देंगे कोना कोना पर होने नहीं देंगे कोरोना. Remember that? So that was associated with what? मार के तोड़ देंगे कोना कोना होने नहीं देंगे कोरोना. It was generating fear in the minds of the masses that we will hit you down to pulp, we will beat you down to pulp, but we will not let you suffer from COVID. So that was the administrative intent behind, like, not getting into any kind of action, people not getting into any kind of action which creates a threat to law and order, which creates a problem to public peace and equanimity. Okay, say, to this question 90% of the people will be talking about, like, love, and that is what happened. Even in the class, majority of you people spoke of love. But please understand, when we speak of love, love is something which is like the first choice when you are talking about private relations. In private relation, at all times you have to regulate the relation with love. But this component is associated with public relation. And in public relationship, you are not supposed to seek love and approval of everyone. You are supposed to maintain law and order. So this law and order and good governance, maintaining rules and regulation, is your priority. Okay, I know that it is an orientalist approach whereby one is endorsing the, like, beating or any kind of such physical coercion or physical action, that because in orientalist society it is like, oh, if the child is not hearing, just beat it up. If the, like, people are not hearing, the, like, government should beat them up. So this is a very orientalist attitude which is prevailing in entire South Asia, whereby we like, are open to exercise coercion. That's why I said that this should never be the choice, if, like, given. But if that's the only choice you are left with, you should not shy away from exercising it. Ideal situation is using both, but if someone is saying you have to choose only one, then in that situation, as a civil servant, you have to choose fear. Okay, in Manusmriti is a very controversial, I would say, we can say, a book which is like, documented fact associated with looking down upon lower caste groups or the Dalits. It is associated with looking down upon, or the women, because that was the suitability of those time periods, because that was the culture of those time periods. Like, presently doing away with it, Manusmriti, you need to understand, was also a book associated with how to maintain good governance. There are dedicated chapters in Manusmriti. I would say, like, at least 3 chapters out of 5 are dedicated to good governance, how governance is maintained in the ancient society, and how, what are the do's and don'ts that ought to be maintained associated with it. In Manusmriti, there is a quotation that fear is the source of ethical behavior. In the similar manner, if you see Bhishma Pitamaha, when he is sleeping on the bed of arrows in Mahabharata, he is also saying the same thing, that nothing happens without fear when we are speaking of it. Okay, so in public relation, like, fear should be prioritized. Fear should reign above love. Okay, fear should reign above love. In private relation, you are talking about love. Okay, that's what you are supposed to understand. So once fear is there, you can also substantiate this. Once fear is there, love can be exercised. Okay, that's what you can talk about. So love can be, or love shall be, will be a better word according to me. So love shall be established. Love shall be established when we are speaking of it, right? So again, you can connect it with this, that politics has no relations with morals, no relations with morals. Okay, this is something, who is saying this? Machiavelli. Okay, so politics has no relations with morals. And when Machiavelli is discussing the relationship between politics and morality, he is saying there is no relationship between like politics and morals. The prime, we can say, objective of a politician or of a ruler should be to maintain law and order. It should be associated with maintaining harmony, and that is something which like a leader should always prioritize. That's what like he's saying. So when you're prioritizing this given possibility of good governance, like economic development, harmony, then in that situation you have to go ahead with the possibility of generating fear or coercion. Okay, so you can understand there are two sides of the same coin. Like everything is not conducive, or everything is not as per, we can say, the possibilities that we all can reflect with. And Gandhiji will be saying that there can be no politics without ethics, just the opposite of what Machiavelli is saying. So you can understand that earlier when we are speaking of it, there was like ideology and politics taken together. Over the time period in present situations, we can see somewhere ideologies do get lost, they are compromised. And when it is happening, so in present times, when politics is exercised without ideology, what do we see because of that? So politics without ideology leads to crony capitalism. So leads to crony capitalism. We can think of criminalization of politics. So criminalization of politics is what we can see. Right? So I hope all of you are able to understand that. So now we can just take a break. It is 7. So 7 p.m., 15 minutes break. You can ponder upon this, what you just studied, get a wholesome reflection of it, and we shall be back. SME, please help me with smaller queries like what is crony capitalism and what is fear and all that. All right, welcome back, all of you. So, as we are moving ahead with this given sub-segment, we can reflect upon now the last bit that is associated with modern philosophers and thinkers. Though it has been substantiated in the form of notes, but we need to have an overview related to it. So, first and foremost, we start with Immanuel Kant. Immanuel Kant, who is also known for his deontological ethics, whereby he discussed that it is duty that should be prioritized at all time, right? So, duty based approach, we can say means based approach, right? And when we are speaking of it, rather than end spaced, mean spaced approach. So when we are speaking of this given dimension associated with Immanuel Kant, so he is the thinker, if I reflect upon the time period, so 1724 to 1804, he is one of the most influential Western philosophers. After Aristotle, imagine when we are giving weightage to a philosopher, it's him. So Kant, a very high possibility of a question coming from him. His background is not that important, but just knowing him as a person will enable you to visualize the person. So he is born in Königsberg, Kaliningrad, and he is not interested to travel much. He is a bachelor. You can see that he was so punctual that when he was to like pass by the houses of different people, the housewives used to set their clock seeing him because they were aware of his punctuality. He was also very unadventurous, little interest in music and arts. He was primarily focused on logic, mathematics, and science. Okay. Now, origin of moral laws. When we are speaking of like Kant's perspective related to how moral laws come into existence. So he is rejecting scriptures, consciousness, inner perfection of soul or God. He does not consider it to be important per se when we are speaking of Kant. We can also see that Kant is also the person who is considering that any other source like God's will or any other source cannot be considered when we are speaking of it as a source of moral law. The source of moral law has to be always associated with human reasoning. Okay, so neither God's will, inner perfection, conscious, scriptures, no, because he is rejecting it. You can see this. Again, he is saying that morality or our sense of right and wrong is not coming from divine law. It is based on logic and reasoning. And he is a man who has self legislating capacity. What do I imply by the term self legislating capacity? So, self legislating capacity is associated with, we can consider the capability to bring about change, the capability to, like we can say, improve upon one's nature by one's own sense of moral reflection or thought. So when we are talking about deontological theory of Immanuel Kant, he is, like you can see the term deontology to begin with, it is associated with deon, it is related to duty, and logos related to reason. Okay, so when duty is your reason for following a specific action, to reaching out to an action, so that is associated with deontological approach. Means when an action is moral and it can be considered to be a duty with reason, that is something which is associated with universally acceptable possibilities. So with respect to this, we all can further reflect upon this given dimension, that consequences, when we are reflecting upon consequences, it has nothing to do with moral duty. Okay, and when we reflect upon it further, we can see that an action leading to undesirable consequences could be moral. Okay, and an action leading to good consequences could be immoral, right? What does this mean? An action leading to desirable consequences could be moral, and like an action which is leading to good consequences could be immoral. This is something which is probably confusing you. So here are the examples when we are speaking of it. So for first example is undesirable consequence. So demolition, okay, when we are speaking of this, and then we are speaking of this. So first example you can see, so demolition of an illegal property. What is demolition? It is an undesirable consequence. You don't want to break a building, you don't want to pull down a building, but we can see it is an illegal property. Illegal property. So if it is illegal, then it is a moral action, right? It is a moral action to pull down an illegal property. So demolition is, we can say, an undesirable consequence, but it is moral. It is moral because it is guided by the possibility of what is right and what is wrong. So, what are we guided by? The duty, what ought to be done, what ought to be done. So, even if the consequence is negative, a demolition is happening of a building, but because it is guided by the duty to do away with illegal constructions, it becomes deontologically correct. It becomes correct as an action. Again, he is saying that uh, hanging a needy person with minor crime. Now, you're hanging the person, you're killing the person with minor crime. Okay, may be immoral. Okay, it may be immoral because, like, you are killing the person, but it may lead to good consequence. Why good consequence? Because you're eliminating a person who has a tendency to commit crime. So, an action leading to good consequence. Good consequence is what? The good consequence is you are eliminating crime. Okay, so crime getting eliminated. So crime getting eliminated is, we can say, good consequence, but you are killing the person. Okay, you are hanging the person, and hanging that too for what? For a minor crime. So hanging for minor crime. So this is something immoral, and that's why it should not be done. So even if there is a good consequence attached to what is being done, you have to refrain from doing it because it is immoral. So the idea of morality and immorality, imagine, with such exhaustive sentence it has been discussed, and I hope with example all of you can understand that, right? So like demolition in this act, first one we all can see, demolition was what? It was a negative consequence, but because the building is what? It is illegal. So it is a moral act. So the idea of morality and immorality is not based on consequence. It is based on the duty. It is based on the value. It is based on the ethos which is guiding the action. So rather than attaching to the consequence, we need to attach to the, we can consider the what is being performed. Again, further moving ahead, he is talking about imperatives. His categorical imperatives are very important. You will always realize that it is constantly discussed in different places. So, what is categorical imperative? What is hypothetical imperative? And basically, what is the idea of imperative? That has been hyphenated here. So, if we are discussing about the idea of imperative, what is an imperative? So, imperative is more like a command. Okay, like pay your taxes, stop kicking me, don't kill animals. They are like that. Then we can find there are two types of imperatives. First is hypothetical and second is categorical. So, what is hypothetical? As the word goes, hypothesis. Hypothesis means a tentative deduction of a statement from existing perspectives. Okay, hypothesis in science, when you go for scientific research, what do? From existing theories, from existing perspectives, or from common sense, you deduce a hypothetical statement. So hypothetical imperative, when we are speaking of it, these are imperatives, and these imperatives are what? Commands that apply on a person based on a situation. Okay, so commands that apply on a person based on a situation, that is something which is associated with hypothetical imperatives. So when we speak of imperative 1 and imperative 2, okay, we all can reflect upon these two segments. First, there is this condition, if. So that's why hypothesis is there. If you want to go to medical school, study biology in college. Okay, so if you fulfill this condition, then you can go to a medical school, right? So like medical school is referred abroad, but it is basically a medical college. So complete biology at graduation level, then you can go to a specialized college which is associated with the possibility of medical sciences. Okay, so it is associated with what? Conditions if you fulfill, then you can move ahead. So there are commands, there are conditions which ought to be completed at all cost, right? Again, the second one we are discussing, if you are hungry, then go eat something. Okay, so the condition is hungry, and if you are hungry, then what is the command? The command is go and eat something to fulfill the hunger. So that is hypothetical. If this is there, then do this. Okay. So command is there, but on a tentative imaginary situation. Okay. A tentative possibility. Imaginary will not be correct word. Tentative possibility of a situation. So if there is one possibility, you can go for the specific action. So for the tentative possible situation, you have to fulfill a given action. I hope all of you are able to make sense out of what is given over here. And I hope you are able to connect with this, that what does this given statement say, right? Okay. Again, categorical imperatives. Categorical is absolute command. There is no mincing of words related to it. Absolute command. Okay. When you are obeying the command for its own sake, you have to obey it. Not that, oh, if I don't obey, what will happen? No, obey it for the sake of it. Okay, like don't cheat on your taxes, don't kill people. I mean, there is no alternate way to behave. You have to do it. It's like absolute command. Okay. Similarly, you can see with respect to categorical imperative, that it is, you need to understand, it is an intentional action, it is a rational action, and it is not always permissible, right? And it is not always permissible means, it is an intentional, even if an action is intentional, even if the action is rational, means you, intentional means you are conscious of the action, you are aware of the action, you are doing it with awareness, you are doing it with alertness, even if it is logical for you. Okay, logical for you, still it is not always permissible. For example, you may intentionally, means consciously, refuse to pay debt, that I cannot pay the debt. What is the logic? It is benefiting you, that if I am not paying the debt which I have taken from my friend, it is making me comfortable. So it is like, logically helpful for me. Like personally, it is helpful for me. However, you can't recommend don't return a debt universally. You cannot say that to other people also who have owned money from you, or your relatives or loved ones, whosoever. You can't say don't return a debt. Why? You can't say, because it will be incorrect. It is not, it cannot be any morally permissible maxim. Why it cannot be a morally permissible maxim? Because it will ruin trust of a society. It will impact the commerce of a society, it will impact the economic progress of a society. So even though it is suitable for you, even though it is logical for you, but it is not permissible. Even though you are consciously trying to decide it, so it is logical for you, you are doing it consciously, still it cannot be a categorical imperative, because it is not permissible, because it is not associated with larger good, it is not associated with the larger happiness or greatness of the people when we are speaking of it. Yes, you can think of Japan bombing also, Vivek. Now, so a rational moral agent should act in a way that maxim of his action becomes a universal law. Then only it will become categorical imperative. Any action which you feel is not just emerging out of consciousness or awareness, which is not only emerging from logic or rationality, okay, it is also something which is emerging from, we can say, universal possibilities. It is also emerging, we can consider, from the possibilities associated with what is permissible, what ought to be done, what ought to be executed. Okay, so that is something which you can connect with this given possibility. Okay, that it should always be permissible universally, accepted universally. So there are certain categorical imperatives which have been laid down, like do not kill someone, do not kill anyone, a person. Okay, so you can consider, you should not kill, you should not injure, you should not steal, you should be kind to others. Okay, so that is something which can be associated with few laws which can be derived from Kant's categorical imperative, which is executed even today, which is followed even today. All right. I hope all of you are able to connect with Kant's categorical imperative, and I hope you all can associate with his, we can say, deontological approach, right? So he gave maxims of morality, and in the maxims of morality, he said that A right should be universal in nature. What is right universally is something which can become a categorical imperative. Then he also discussed that a person should not be using himself or herself as a means constantly. Okay, we should always respect our own personality as well as the personality of others, means refrain from exploiting another person or exploiting even yourself. Respect the possibility of identity. Okay, and with respect to this, he also said that all rational and self-ruled human beings, they stand on equal grounds. Everyone is equal. So his principle was associated with the, we can say, maxim of equality. He was believing in equality, and he believed in the synthesis of all kinds of forms and matter and treating everyone equally. So that's something which we can connect with Immanuel Kant's, like we can say, categorical imperative, his idea associated with what kind of universal laws ought to be there, how to arrive at those universal laws, and what ought to be followed. So, other consequences of his categorical imperative is that it has led to the origin of moral principles. Human beings are an end in themselves, means you have to value a person because the person is there. You cannot consider that a person is just a mere instrument who should be playing a role in the society. That ways you can exploit people on the basis of their caste, class, gender, community. So don't treat people as means. You have to respect everyone. So respect everyone. That's what. Respect everyone. And his ideas, they are something which is also guiding us to human rights, which leads to the concept of equality, universal laws, right? So Kantian philosophy, how it can be used in civil services when we speak of it, because it's very important, I told you. So you can consider that he is suggesting that a government officer must always follow Kantian philosophy, means the duty is as important as the goal, and the duty should be guided by universal principle or law, right? Emotions and sentiments often misguide people, so one should refrain from it. A person should always follow law as a moral duty, means this is what is right for me and at all times I should follow without any legal coercion, that if I don't do this will be the punishment. No, you should not follow law and order because of some legal punishment. You should follow it because that is what you have to think like, that is what you have to be. Okay, again we can consider in government you can be punished. Okay, in government you can be punished for doing an illegal or an immoral act. Okay, if it is done in the larger public interest. Okay, so it can be an immoral or illegal act, but if it is done in the larger public interest, still it is after all an illegal or immoral act. More like we can consider Robin Hood like approach. So Robin Hood like approach, when you are speaking of it, you are like, oh, I distributed food grains to the poor. But if you have snatched it from some merchant, if you have taken it away from some, we can say, businessman or a zamindar illegally, that is not going to justify your action and you can be punished for it. Okay, so more like a Robin Hood kind of approach is not to be expected from a bureaucrat. Now, what is the criticism of Kantian approach? So the criticism is that we cannot judge human beings on the basis of principles alone. One has to be answerable to the consequences as well. You can also see there can be a lot of evil done in the name of moral principles. Okay, like for example, in the name of right and wrong only, Hitler exercised so much of violence towards, we can see, the Jews, right? So a lie may be good if it is saying saving the life of someone. So rather than only focusing on principles, we also have to focus sometimes on outcomes, even if the principles are compromised, but it is leading to a positive outcome, that also can be exercised. Hence, we can see that, this criticism of Kantian philosophy can be connected with this given dimension. Again, it is difficult to be moral. When we speak of it, it is quite difficult to be moral when we are discussing about this given dimension, because if others are not obeying, okay, the moral law, it can create more chaos pertaining to what we are experiencing. Okay, so it is difficult to be moral if other people are not obeying the moral laws, and that ways the capability to maintain law and order can be challenging. And moral laws, they can't be conceived in a platonic world, means in an ideal world. Okay, and it is implemented in a society without bothering about the results. You have to reflect upon the society in which you are talking about the moral law and how the society is perceiving that moral law. You have to consider that. Okay, lawful evil is a loophole in Kantian philosophy. Yes, you can consider that. Okay, and what is the counter view associated with like Kantian philosophy? So morals, they are not absolute. Okay, they are a code of conduct that can be associated with group survival. They can vary as per the group, and every idea leads to an opposite idea, which also leads to a higher or a more complex whole. Again he is discussing about there is an like underlying possibility of identity of opposites. Okay, we can also see that every thesis is following an antithesis, and which later leads to synthesis. Now what is this? So like let's say there is an idea. Okay, and the idea is called here the thesis. In this idea, like let us say there is a criticism or a deformity that appears. So a criticism, or we can say some kind of deformity or some kind of change. Okay, or we can say antagonistic or opposite perception emerges. So some opposing idea emerges. Okay, and this will lead to, we can say, antithesis, right? So like let us say like we can consider Gandhiji spoke of like the possibility of let us attain independence on the lines of non-violence. And then there were thinkers who emerged, revolutionaries who emerged, who said that no, a bit of violence is also necessary to make the possibility of us being heard. Okay, so the criticism, the deformity, or the, we can say, opposing idea is creating antithesis. And then there will be emergence of thinkers who will be reciting to both, will be saying a bit of violence exercised along with peaceful coordination, and like going for a peaceful accord, for a meeting, for reflecting upon a final possibility. So that is associated with synthesis. Okay, so synthesis is blending both, blending both. So you are blending the, we can consider the concept of thesis and antithesis. No, Abhishek, I'm not giving the idea of like liberalism or communism, because there are students in the class who will start asking what is liberalism and what is communism. So I have to save myself graciously from any kind of unnecessary component. I mean, this component of thesis, antithesis, and synthesis is discussed in the concept of dialectics of Hegel, and also what Marx is discussing in his concept of historical materialism. I can speak about it at length and breadth, but the truth is how important it is for a student to receive when Kant is going on. So I have to teach Immanuel Kant, not various other philosophies and concepts. So I have to save myself from explaining any unnecessary information. So all those who are understanding, great. If you have been introduced to this concept, those who are not, don't worry. Okay, don't worry. Just remember there can be an idea which is emerging, then there will be a criticism to the idea, as I told you that like suppose Gandhi is talking about freedom, and he is talking about maintaining non-violence at all times. Antithesis will be like revolutionary terrorists, and then there will be a blending of both. So we can see, like for example, like synthesis version can be something like Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. He is negotiating with the British, he is negotiating with, we can say, other forces like the Japanese army, the, we can say, the German army. He is creating international pressure, and at the same time he is also creating an army. So he is creating like an army which is capable to create violence, and at the same time he is creating international pressure by going for peace accords and like negotiating with, like we can consider Hitler negotiating with Japan. So all that is also happening. It's a blend of both. Okay, so this given possibility. Now, so every thesis will have a counter response, and finally the counter response will be blended into a new formidable acceptable response, and that is leading to like synthesis. I sometimes give it as an idea, like let us say there is a mango tree. So this is mango tree which is holding a mango. Mango is the idea, and when the mango falls, so what happens is like this is like thesis. Okay, and when like let us say there are a lot of mangoes on the tree, so a mango falls down and dissociates from the tree, so this will become antithesis, and later on that mango will sprout up, germinate, and become a separate sapling which is different from the tree. So this different identity is synthesis. Okay, and if you still cannot understand, then don't worry, you can find a lot of videos on antithesis, thesis and synthesis. You can just read about it. I'm glad that like Ashmita, you have understood it, and I hope that others have also understood this basic concept. It's very elementary. And okay, now with respect to this, when we are talking about this, so the growth of an idea, when we are talking about this with respect to Kantian perspective, he is saying that growth of an idea, it follows an evolution cycle like a living organism. Like first, like you can see this the same thing, like I gave you the mango tree example. So just like a living organism is constantly growing bit by bit with more specializations, more features, more possibilities, the organs becoming like more we can say specialized in nature, more well defined in nature, in the similar manner the growth of an idea takes place. First it is at a nascent stage, then it develops a lot of special characteristics, features, then it gets more complexity in terms of its depth and understanding, and that is how you can see that an idea also evolves. Okay, then we move to Thomas Hobbes. Okay, when we are talking about Thomas Hobbes, we all can like reflect upon him from the perspective of the time period, so 1588 to like 1679. Okay, he's the man who is associated with, we can see, like he's lived quite some time, right? 90 years, as you can see, 1588, 1679. So almost 90 years is what he has like survived, and we can see that he has come in contact with a lot of historical people during this time period. He was quite excited about new science. Okay, and he was also, along with being excited about new science, he was also concerned about the possibility associated with religious and civil war happening in the society. So, concerned about, we can say, religious and civil war, religious and civil war. Okay, so it helped him to develop, because of this, he developed he developed a unique approach to both approach to ethics, as well as he developed science of politics. Science of politics. Okay, so Thomas Hobbes, if I'm talking about it, about him, he is like basically explaining his philosophy on the ground of materialism. Okay, so when I'm talking about like this given segment, he believed that everything that happens, everything that happens, everything that happens is a result, is a result of the physical world, is a result of the physical world. And okay, soul does not exist. Soul doesn't exist. So other thinkers, they were talking about soul, the existence of soul. He's like, there's nothing like soul. So, like Socrates, if you remember, he spoke of soul, and during his death, his soul like leaving bit by bit. And this man, he is saying that there's nothing like soul. Okay. So, it is everything that's happening, it is associated with our physical or material world when we are speaking of it. Okay. Again, he is associated, his contention was associated with the concept of good and evil. So, he discussed the idea of good and evil. So he said that good and evil is associated with human desire, associated with human desire and aversion. desire and aversion, what we like and what we dislike. That is defining our idea of good and bad. In other words, what human beings, like in totality, consider that it is desirable, that is associated with the idea of good, and what human beings decide is wrong, it is leading to the component of evil, right? So for example, we can say that earlier widows were treated as, like, or spinsters, they were treated as indulging in black magic, and they were considered as evil people, right? So this very possibility, that was aversion to the existence of widows, and that's why there was so much of crime, or there was, like, a component of sati existing, right? So he said that there's nothing like good and evil. It is the community deciding and determining what is desirable and what is non desirable, and what ought to be followed and what ought not to be followed. Okay. So this is the philosophy of values, he's saying. This is the philosophy of values. Along with that, you will see that he is also discussing that this is an attitude. Why do we have this idea of good and bad? So it is an attitude of self preservation, attitude of preservation self preservation and protection. You are doing this to preserve yourself by labeling things as good and bad, which can be harmful for the larger society, or can be in goodness with the, like, we can say the larger society. Okay. Along with that, we can see that he published his book called Leviathan. So Levi, yeah, Leviathan. And in Leviathan, he is discussing about the physicalist outlook of the concept, like associated with the value of social contract. Okay. So his value of a social contract, value of a social contract for a peaceful society, for a peaceful society. All right. So that is something which he created. So Hobbes, he said that within a society, within WITH क्या कर रहे हैं? So Hobbes said that within a society, actually brain is thinking faster, trying to explain it to you simultaneously, and then writing it down so that you don't miss the keywords. Okay. So we can consider that within a society, when we are reflecting upon the ideas of peace, the idea of social contract. Okay. So we all can see that we all can reflect upon the given possibility that in a, how's it okay, please support with some basic insights, SME, and thank you for all the support you are extending and lending all this time. So, good evening, Wish. But why are you joining so late? I mean, like, was the session not starting at like 6? Sorry, I'm saying 6, 5 p.m. for you. I like wish you back, but I'm concerned how you are covering it up. Witch hunting laws in UK? Yes, witch hunting was not a law, it was a customary practice accepted in UK. But when it is expected from judiciary to exercise harsh punishment against heinous crimes, to set fear and example in society, judiciary pushes for improvement, correction and kindness towards criminals. Yes, we can connect this given dimension, Sudipto, because India follows restitutive law. Restitutive law means you are believing in reformation of the criminal. You are believing in the conversion of the heart, or you are believing in improving, in reforming, in making the criminal a better person. There is a scope for reformation for everyone. If India won't have been following the restitutive law, if it would have gone for coercive laws, it would have cut hand, it would have castrated. Okay, that is an order of, we can say, these laws are considered oppressive laws. When you believe in human goodness, that is a more evolved way of looking at laws and trying to create a more civilized society. Oppression is when you underestimate the logic of the people, underestimate the goodness in people, underestimate the scope of reformation, when you underestimate that there can be a chance or scope for like improving and changing the attitudes of the people. So when you are believing in people, you are going for restitutive law. When you don't believe in people, you believe that they should be controlled, command and coerced, then you go for oppressive laws. All right, Sudipto, so I hope you are understanding this. So with respect to this, philosophers, all philosopher years are important to remember? No, Anushka, as a teacher, I'm supposed to introduce what is the tentative time period when they are born, so that you can parallelly recall the historical incidents that must be unfolding at that time. That is for that purpose. Okay, but it is not necessary for you to mention the philosopher's birth year and death year like in your answers. It's not necessary. All right. Is it true about vampire hunters? Oh, God. I'm just getting back to my game. So, because then you won't be understanding Leviathan, then something else will be explained by me. All right. So, when we are talking about Leviathan, which was based on value of a social contract for a like a peaceful society and how it is important. So, Hobbes explained that like if individuals within a society, so probably I can write if individuals, okay, if individuals within a society like let's say continually live by their own self interest, continually live by their own self interest, their own self interest, okay, that can create like hurt, they can lead to hurting each other, so they can hurt each other. And if they are hurting each other in that situation, there can be a state of war for the given possibility, there can be a state of war. Okay, and if members of the society are bound together, if members are bound together in a society, if they have to live together in a society, so if members are bound together in a society, okay, so if people are like made to stay together in a society, we cannot exercise any kind of harm or war. It has to be on the basis of, so it has to be based on a state of peace, a state of peace. That's what he suggested. Okay, and how to achieve a peaceful society? So when all members unconditionally, how can we achieve peace? So peace can be achieved when all members of the society unconditionally transfer, mind the word unconditionally, without any condition. Okay, so when they are unconditionally transfer all their power, transfer all of their ability or power, ability and will, all, okay, ability and will to defend themselves, to defend themselves, to defend themselves to a sovereign power, to a sovereign power means all the power is shifted to the sovereignty. The sovereignty is going to defend them, their rights, okay, their possibilities under a form of contract, under a form of social contract. That's what he is discussing. You'll have to memorize this key points and memorize it. Simple. That's the only solution. And when the social contract is established, the sovereign power gets the responsibility to guard the people. Okay. So when social contract is there, then what will happen? Who will mediate? So the sovereignty is going to mediate. So sovereignty is going to mediate between people. If the people are fighting, then the sovereignty is having the responsibility to mediate for all disputes, for all disputes, all forms of disputes that are there. Okay, And if suppose he said that, if like let us consider like there is an agreement whereby any kind of unjust practice has happened, or any kind of incorrect punishment is levied, in that situation, like let's say the sovereign power has also violated its own responsibility, then in that situation the society can find its own different sovereign power, a different sovereign rule. Okay, so he also spoke of the in the face of injustice. So if there is injustice, then in that situation what can happen? Society can find its another sovereign rule. Society can find what? Another sovereign rule. Okay, so that's how you can speak of it. Okay, so that's what we all can speak of. Fine, I hope all of you are getting it. So further, when we are discussing about this given subsegment, we all can move ahead and we can think of Rousseau, the concept of social contract, because we were discussing Thomas Hobbes and we can understand the concept of social contract given by Thomas Hobbes. Now we can reflect upon Rousseau. What has Rousseau got to say with respect to the dimension pertaining to social contract? Okay, so I hope all of you are able to understand what has been discussed so far. Okay, so when we are talking about Rousseau, Rousseau is basically over here. I've given some content for all of you. So Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Jean-Jacques Rousseau is between 1712 to 1778, and his discourses associated with, like when we are talking about his work, we can see there are two possibilities. First is his discourse on science and arts. Okay, and then there is second one, discourse on the origin of inequality. So this one is the first one, this one is the second one. Okay, so discourse on science and arts was based on the idea that society has become such that there is no emphasis put on virtues and morality. No one bothers, no one cares, or no one is actually pursuing the possibility of, we can consider what is the virtuous action, what is the moral action, and how to pursue it at all times. It is not something which is encouraged, or it is not something which is lived at all given times when we are talking about it. So the discourse, Vivek, I am taking cognizance of your issue. If you zoom it, you will understand it. Okay, because that's like unique to you. Rest everyone is understanding it, and the size of these content which is in a print, you can, if you can understand that, the almost similar is what is maintained when I'm writing it. Okay, so please, like just zoom it in your phone or take the printout, you'll be able to understand that. Rousseau competes in essay competition and won. From there he started to write. Yes, that is something associated with his background. um, Yes, that's great, Anshul. I'm so happy to know that earlier you felt that it is a difficult subject, but now you are finding it interesting and doable. The possibility of discomfort and toughness is associated with, it is because you have never been familiar with a discipline. People are not comfortable in a situation with which they are not familiar with. That is also one of the methods why students, go ahead with choosing specific disciplines which they have studied in graduation as their optional subject, because of the precursor, the introduction to the discipline. But when you actually get to understand ethics, integrity, and aptitude, realize it is so important for your wholesome development, your wholesome insight, and you as a person, even before you become a civil servant or like the citizen of the world, citizen of India, first and foremost for your own wholesome growth and well-being, this discipline is so important because it helps you to evolve. The process of evolution unfolds bit by bit as you actually gain confidence in this discipline, and with greater practice, because right now you are just getting introduced to the terms, introduced to the concepts. When you start writing and doing practice, the real change, the real breakthrough you will experience then. Because with memory you will start blending concepts, you will start mixing chapters, and that is the level at which you have to learn how to operate. If you're thorough with the chapters, like today only when I was discussing the essay paper with the main students who are just about to write mains 2 months later, So when I was discussing with them, all those who were struggling to generate content on philosophical topics or ethics based topics, I said, are you very thorough with paper 4? Because the greater your level of confidence and being thorough with all the chapters of paper 4, the greater your possibility to pull out insights from different chapters if it is relevant to the content of that essay topic, and write the content. Again, your capability to not only create the dynamics of the, like we can say, the philosophical essays, you can connect it with the wisdom of GS paper 1, 2 and 3 as well. And thoroughness comes with revision. And revision is when you write the keywords, memorize it, keep your hand, you revisit and revisit at least 3 times. It is then that you start gaining a level of confidence and clarity. So right now, what lecture is just a precursor. It is just like introducing you to the terms and explaining and simplifying the possibilities. This simplification shall further unfold as a part of your thought and conscience with greater practice. So it is an earnest request to all of you that please get into the habit of practicing. This is the right time. The subjects, like we can say ethics, essay, optional, these are to be studied and these are to be completed by January. Okay, because after February you will be more focused on the prelims oriented subjects. These are hardcore mains oriented subjects, but they have a sizable portion, like essay 250 marks, ethics 250 marks, optional 500 marks. So this is like 1000 marks in totality. The total value of your mains paper is 1750. Out of 1750, more than half is associated with ethics, essay and optional. And this is the time to finish this half. Okay, and that will come only after practicing. Okay, so get into this given possibility of practicing. Now, we discussed about like Thomas Hobbes pertaining to social contract. You'll find Rousseau is also talking about social contract as his work is associated with it. So he is talking about two discourses. One is discourse on science and arts, in which he is saying people are distancing themselves from virtue, distancing themselves from morality. And then the second discourse is on the basis of the origin of inequality. And in the origin of inequality, he's tracing the history of human beings from pure state of nature through, we can consider, institution of a, like we can say, a specious contract, and it is also associated with the present day civil society. Now, what is specious? Specious is fake. Like what is looking like, it is not the same. It is looking very moral, it is looking very good, it is looking very ideal, but it is harmful, but it is going to cause any kind of negative repercussion. Okay, that's what the term specious means. Will you remember the meaning? Something similar to the word species, but it is not the same. Specious, Specious, specious. When something is looking safe, healthy, helpful, it is looking like it is like good, but it is having a negative side of it. Okay, it is having a negative connotation to it. Okay, everyone will understand. Can you understand the word specious? Specious social contract. Social contract, I'll explain. Do you understand the meaning of the word specious? Everyone, can you understand the meaning of the word specious? I explained it twice. Were you alert to pay attention to it? Okay. So, yes, okay, good, good, good. All those who are able to understand. So, specious, when you are like portraying something else in the world of ethics, where here when we are using it with this specific reference, here the meaning of specious is when it is showing as something else, but it is not proving to be that. Okay. So, the facade is something else, but the result is something bad, negative. Okay. So, the history of human beings in the pure state of nature, when we are speaking of it, through the institution of special social contract that results in present day civil society. So, we try to show that the social contract is good, it is conducive, but it is having its own problems. That's why there are criticisms. Okay. So, like in fact, the chapter 1 begins with one of Rousseau's most famous quotes, in which he says, "Man was born free, and everywhere he is in chains." So, the social contract, rather than liberating the person, rather than empowering the person, the social contract is proving to be the chains. It is holding down the person. It is holding down the potential and the capability of the person. So unlike the first two discourses, the social contract, it is looking forward and is exploring the potential for from moving from a specious social contract to a legitimate social contract. This is what he is saying, that rather than having a social contract which looks good, but it is actually putting people in chains, it is beholding the possibility, it is, we can say, controlling the possibility, it is rather than liberating them, it is getting them fixated in various forms of unfreedoms. We can see that this social contract, it will be legitimate and it will be helpful and empowering the people with their various types of capabilities. Okay, can we connect mirage with specious? Well, when we are speaking of mirage, mirage does not exist at all. It appears to exist. Whereas specious, we are using the term specious to something that is existing, but it is not existing with the same face we presumed it to be. That's what Nikhil it means. Because with words there is hairline difference, and we have to be careful about the hairline difference, right? Okay. So Rousseau, when we are talking about it, yes, more like Trojan, agreed, Abhishek. Okay, now, so when we are talking about, we can talk about general will, his concept of general will. So Rousseau, when he's talking about his idea of general will, you will see that he's arguing that following the general will, when we follow the general will, it allows for individual diversity. It allows for freedom. Okay, general will, what is general will? The common will of the people which is submitted. Remember Hobbes, he was also talking about this component associated with when general will of the people is submitted to the sovereignty, whereby the sovereignty is going to decide for the people, and that's how wars and conflicts between people and communities is avoided. But if the sovereignty goes unjust, then you can remove the sovereignty from power and you can go for a second option of another sovereignty. That's what Hobbes was talking. Now, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, he's talking about individual diversity and freedom, and he's talking about, connecting the possibility of putting your general will when we are speaking of it. And at the same time, the general will also encourage, it's not only associated with individual, it is also associated with the well-being of the society on the whole. Okay, so well-being of the society on the whole. Therefore we can see there can be certain situations whereby the interest of an individual, okay, is in conflict with the interest of the society. Something may be helpful for an individual but may not be in the larger interest of the society. For example, what zamindars want will not be in the larger interest for the tenants, right? So we can say the particular interest of individuals may not be in the larger interest of the society on the whole. So, this tension has led to some of the claims of Rousseau's political thought, that it is hopelessly inconsistent. Why? Because sometimes he is talking about general will, which is in consonance with individual will. And then he is saying that, well, individual will is not always associated with general will. So, people will be like, what he is saying is quite inconsistent. At some time he is saying that it is there, then he is saying no, it is not like that. So he tries to resolve the tension, and how he resolves the tension, he is trying to create a middle ground. Okay, more like a middle path, more like a golden mean. Okay, so he tries to create a middle path associated with this given dimension. He said that it's difficult to arrive at a common consensus that what is the individual will and what is the the people's will, the community's will, but we have to find a common ground. So how can we arrive at a common ground? How can we arrive at a general will? So first and foremost, the general will has to be directly tied to sovereignty. So when we are like connecting the general will to the sovereignty, but not the sovereignty merely in the sense of whoever holds power. Okay, when we are talking about it, we do not imply the sovereignty from the perspective of anyone who's holding power. No, that is not the idea of sovereignty. When we are speaking about the perspective or the idea associated with sovereignty, we need to understand that simply by having power for Rousseau is not sufficient, and power has to be morally legitimate. Okay, so power has to be legitimate, then only it becomes sovereignty, and this sovereignty has to be directed towards public good at all times. Okay, you are never going to compromise with the, like we can say, the goodness of the people, the benefit of the people. And general will sometimes be abstract as well. Why? Because it will be open to interpretation, and the interpretation will always be in favor of the general or the common goodness, the goodness of the public. So it can set up rules, social classes, even a monarchical government, but it can never specify, like, particular individuals, the specific individuals who can benefit from it, because that can create a biased possibility of rule, and that will be against the principle of general will. So it is not associated with particular individuals, it is not associated with particular members of the class, it is not associated with particular rulers. It is always in consonance with the larger community, the larger society, or the goodness of the society on the whole. Okay, so you can see goodness of the society on the whole. But general will is infallible. We can see that it can only do so when it is benefiting for the society. Infallible means something which can not go wrong, something which can never go wrong. Okay, so we can see how Rousseau is emphasizing the idea of equality and the idea of freedom for citizens, because when people are exercising equality and freedom, exploitation will not be rendered at individual level, and individuals will somewhere have an individual say in the situation, but at the same time the larger goodness of the society will be kept in consonance, will be kept in understanding, and that's how it will be connected. Okay, then this is the second concept on education. You can see the Emile, and the Emile is associated with education. General will, just this much. Okay, so when we are talking about general will, we can see that it is associated with what? Proper intervention on the part of sovereignty. Okay, and the sovereignty is trying to understand the freedom and the equality of citizens. It is trying to create a delicate balance between supreme authority of the state and the right of individual. So this is what we can consider is somewhat associated with the general will, whereby you are honoring the supreme authority of the state, the larger goodness of the public, and you're constantly trying to balance it with the rights of the individual, which needs to be protected simultaneously. And that is what social contract is based on. Okay, so social contract is based on creating this possible delicate balance, so that individuals with wealth or privilege or any kind of power are not able to exercise any kind of exertion, we can say exploitation, any kind of coercion which is harming or which is negative for the well-being of all. So that's what we can connect with. All right, now with respect to Emile on education, so what does Rousseau talk about on education? Now this is a very interesting take on education. You can quote it on essays related to education. So Rousseau says that the goal of education should be to cultivate our natural tendencies. Cultivate our natural tendencies. What is natural tendencies? So he's saying that like every fellow citizen has certain natural tendencies. One is, we can say, amor propre, and second is amor de soi. Amor de soi is associated with self love. We all are motivated by self love. We want to be the hero or the heroine of our own story, especially people who are posting pictures on Instagram, clicking pictures and, like, constantly bombarding their profile. You can see these people are so very motivated by amor de soi. Okay, so amor de soi is what? Self love. When we are speaking of it, you can see that, right? So amor de soi is associated with self love, and people are motivated associated with it. He is saying that along with, like, self preservation, like love is a very natural instinct that we possess. So when we are talking about education, education is not only associated with mere literacy, it is associated with identifying the goodness of human beings by nature, and how to encourage the goodness in human beings so that they become morally high. morally upright. And for becoming morally upright, they need to be nurtured with love. And there are two forms of love. One is self love, which encourages self respect, dignity, self esteem. So that is amor de soi. And then comes amor propre. Amor means love, soi means self. Okay. Now comes amor propre. With respect to amor propre, it is an unnatural self love which should not be entertained. Unnatural self love, it is when you're self obsessed, there is more like a narcissist tendency. Okay, so it is it comes about in ways in which human beings view themselves by comparing themselves to others. So when you compare someone with someone and you consider yourself to be better, there is a sense of ethnocentrism. There is a sense of, we can say, the possibility of you being like well off. Now the thing is, it is fine if, like, let's say you are thinking that you're in a better position and you should help others, then amor propre is fine because you're uplifting others, you're standing for others. But if it is creating a negative possibility whereby you are focusing on becoming richer, becoming more powerful, then you will take the share of other people. And when you scoop the share of other people, you are going to create social imbalance. You are going to create social friction when we speak of it, right? So that is something which you are supposed to reflect upon. Okay, so amor propre, when we are talking about it, it can positively contribute to human freedom and even virtue, but it can be extremely dangerous. Why? Because it can lead to corruptible behavior. And why corruptible behavior? Because you will be focusing too much on your own self. So too much of focusing on your own self, it can be a source of vice. It can encourage all kind of corrupt possibilities in you. It can create a lot of self, like it can create a lot of misery for self as well as the society. Okay, so knowing your self worth is important. It is creating superiority, we can consider that also. But you need to understand that like when we are talking about the possibility of, pure state of nature, amor propre, when we are reflecting upon it, it is the fundamental part of nature that we have a tendency to consider ourselves better, superior, focusing on only on ourselves, looking down upon others. So in that situation, getting corrupted is possible. And Rousseau, he is saying that let us be geared up with all the information and concepts. Pupil is student. One of the students in morning class was like, ma'am, pupil of I. I'm like, no, not pupil of I. Pupil also means student. Okay, so he's saying that let us not only empower the students with only information and concept, along with information and concept, let us work towards the student's character. How to develop the sense of morality, how to like a healthy sense of self-worth. Self-worth is with amor de soi and amor propre. Propre, when you are containing it with any kind of fallibility of considering yourself more important than others. So you are saving the person from such kind of fallibility whereby there is too much of self obsession, that is also cut down, amor de propre. And self love, which is connected to self esteem, self respect, that is strengthened. So that is going to create morality, the sense of right and wrong. When you are not creating anything, when you are not enacting upon anything which creates injustice for others. All right, so that is something which all of you can understand this given possibility. Okay, very beautifully expressed by, we can say, Rousseau, as he is substantiating upon the same. Right, then we can take, last but not the least, John Locke's political philosophy. As I'm going to explain John Locke towards the end, I can also give you two pieces of important information. You can follow the IIT Madras professors for topics associated with specific thinkers. So on YouTube, what you will do is you will search the name of the, you can search for the thinker, any thinker you have a problem with, or any thinker you want to know about. There is a possibility you can find that it on Madras University professors, IIT Madras professors, or okay, another relevant source I can say is CEC. Okay, CEC also has such list of lectures which you can reflect upon, and you can listen to it, and that is also something which will, according to me, nourish you with respect to this given component of thinkers and philosophers, if you are following it. So we can talk about this, just a second. Let me Yeah. So there is this NPTEL philosophy lectures. So you will be like, will it get too intense? No, not really. Okay. So NPTEL, it is Ministry of HRD's initiative. So CEC lectures, or we can consider um, NPTEL HRD. They are also by the professors. Please understand, they may not always be, we can consider, interesting and engaging. They are not coaching teachers. They are focused on just providing, yeah, even the Swayam course. You can talk about the Swayam course as well. These are authentic academic sources. If you're stuck with anything, you want to listen with greater detail, maybe for half an hour or 1 hour, these are the sources for the component of moral philosophers and thinkers. Discussed with academic clarity, no incorrect information given, no garbage example or information added by one's own choice and insight. Okay. So, yes, they are 1 hour long classes. So, Himanshi, they will speak very slow, no? You can listen to it with 1.75 speed, so it just reduces the time, and it is a more detailed discussion. You know the wholesomeness of the concept, right? CEC is again associated with a we can consider a website pertaining to it. Yes, the CEC is associated with the Swayam course only. Yeah, so that's what. Now, when we are talking about John Locke, so John Locke, the time period is 1632 to 1704. John Locke, as we are able to see him, we can see that he is one of the most important political philosophers. Okay, political philosophers, and he is giving the treatise on government. Okay, so political philosophers, and he is in his, we can consider, book, two treatises of government. Okay, he defended the claim that men are naturally free. So Rousseau was talking about man is born naturally free but is everywhere in chains. It is just a counter logic to it. Okay, so he is he is defending, mind the word defending. Okay, so defended the claim that men by nature are free, are free. Okay, he is defending this specific claim that people make. Okay, he claims that God has made every person subject to monarchy. Okay, so God has made all people, all people naturally subject to a monarchy. That's why people have a tendency to follow a leader, and the leader is, whether even in a democracy, can sometimes go autocratic. So made all people naturally submit to a monarchy, also naturally subject to a monarchy. That's what he is suggesting. So he argued that people have rights to life. The rights that he is discussing is people have rights to life, life to right to, we can consider, liberty, right to liberty. He is talking about, and right to property, right to property. These are the three rights that people have. Okay, so people have these three rights. That's what he discusses. All right. But then he's saying, when he's discussing about these three foundational rights that people have, these foundational rights are independent of any law of any particular society. Okay, so foundational rights, these are foundational rights which are independent of any society, independent of any society. Means irrespective of which society you live, whether feudal or monarchical or democratic, these rights cannot be touched upon. That's what Locke is considering it to be. Okay. So again, Locke is claiming that people are naturally free and equal as a part of justification with respect to, we can say, understanding that in a legitimate political government, we can see it is a result of social contract. So in simple language, I can say legitimate, um, okay, political government, let me add. Legitimate political government is a result of social contract, and when it is result of a social contract, people will legitimately transfer their power. People shall legitimately legitimately transfer their power. Transfer their power. Okay. And when they are transferring their power, when we are reflecting upon this given possibility, so when people are transferring their power, this transfer is conditional. Mind it is a conditional transfer. Okay. So this conditional transfer is what it is for. Why is it conditional? Because you are expecting a stable life. Okay. A stable, comfortable, we can consider enjoyable life. If either of it gets disturbed, if your basic rights gets disturbed, you can always take away that power and transfer it to another government. Okay. So for stable, comfortable, enjoyable life, you are making a legitimate conditional transfer of power to the government, and that's the social contract that you enjoy. Okay. If the governments fail, they can be replaced. That's what he says. So if the governments fail, they can be replaced. That's what he says. They can be replaced. Okay. And that's why he is also supporting the right to revolution. People have the right to a revolution. If needed, people can also go for a revolution. Okay. So that's something which you can connect. Vivek, is it better now? Can you read? Is it better now? As we are understanding this, because for him the font size was little small, but I think it's fine. Is it fine, Vivek? Okay, all right. Thank you for the information, because I was concerned. Now, so right to revolution, and that is how people can, exercise change of power. There's one more important thing that he says. He's talking about separation of power. Separation of power between legislature and executive. Legislature and executive. So there is a separation of power between legislature and executive. That is also something which he is discussing in his later day political writings, such as the second letter of toleration and third letter of toleration. He is discussing about this component associated with separation of power. Yes, you can also connect it with the, we can say, insights of Montesquieu. So can we connect it with pole violence in Bengal? Well, the pole violence in Bengal, definitely it like got a political angle, but there was something associated with injustice being exercised, whereby that fellow was arrested and put for 6 months behind the bar, just for that 100 rupee, which was taken during the COVID, for relief work. So the BJP, we can say, volunteer gave that 100 rupee to this fellow who was doing the charitable work, and rest is history. All those who are aware of that possibility. um, why should I talk about sociology and anthropology, Aditya? I mean, when you're asking what would I prefer, definitely sociology is my discipline, so I would prefer that. Anthropology is associated with also the human, we can say, evolution, the development of the cranium, the human brain, how the sizes differed. So there is a lot of biology also involved. Sociology is science of society, exploring what is happening, how is it happening, how it came into existence, and what possibilities would unfold, the predictability. So it's very different. But anyway, this is not the place and time to discuss about it, right? So with respect to this, we are seeing that John Locke is laying down some basic foundational principles associated with what ought to be understood and what ought to be perceived related to the politics of the day, how things. Now, you see the time period. I mean, this is way before the French Revolution, almost 80 years, no, 90 years before French Revolution. No, I mean, his death is 90 years before. Almost you can consider 70 years, 80 years before French Revolution, this man is shaping the idea. He is proposing these ideas. So that's why it is considered that we can say the period of enlightenment, or we can say first and foremost Renaissance and post Renaissance, that is period of enlightenment, laid the foundation for a lot of upheavals and changes which Europe experienced. Because first the change happened at the level of ideas, and later it manifested at the level of politics and society. All right. So you can understand this. Give me response. I'm just getting this question, Ruhan. Give me response. Your question got suppressed between some 30, 40 odd like responses which your friends have written. So keep posting the question multiple times. That's how we are able to see it. If your friends are also simultaneously responding or asking. All right. What is written after year? Political. This is what you are asking. Political. This is what. Right. So if you are talking about the year, this is like political philosophers, right? This is what you are asking, right? Renaissance means revival or rebirth. Yes. So yes, when we are talking about John Locke, very briefly, his political philosophy is something which is shaping the idea of rights of people, what they aspire for. So that's what you can connect with. All right, all right. So this is it for today. Let us start with new chapters pertaining to probity in governance, related to corporate governance, related to the ethical components associated with governance and public administration. Notes has been uploaded for all of you. Okay. So notes has been uploaded related to ethics in public administration and governance. There are two chapters I have got it uploaded related to two different books, which is connected to the chapter of emotional intelligence. So you can, one is associated with emotional intelligence in general, another one is specific to public administration. So it is encouraged that you have received some fresh notes, some extra material. Please start reading it. Swarufuddin, the answer is revision. Revision is the key. Multiple revisions. Listen to the session and then just underline the keywords and revise, revise, and revise. As you develop a sense of revision, then see the simpler previous year question paper. Open the notes, open the material, try to write answers. When you start writing answers, you start developing confidence. Okay, so that's the step that you need to follow. Thank you, all of you. So just consult the notes. I hope it is uploaded. During daytime I had shared it, so it should be uploaded. If not so, then tomorrow also you can share this information with me. So that's it for today. Good night and take care.